My Uncle Matt Never Existed. Part 1. Eerie calm, family gathering, first hints. It started, as strange things often do, during a family dinner. The kind where voices overlap, children laugh too loudly, and someone always forgets the potato salad. We were all together, everyone who mattered, everyone we could name, everyone except him. It had been a while since the whole family had been together. You know how it goes. People get busy, life stretches out, and those backyard barbecues fade into the distance like songs from a childhood radio station. But this night felt different, warmer, familiar. We were all there. My parents, my aunts and uncles, 10 cousins running wild across the lawn, their laughter trailing like smoke into the twilight. There was something comforting in the chaos. Plates clinking, sizzling hot dogs on the grill, someone yelling over a spilled drink. It was ordinary. And then my mother laughed, that kind of effortless laugh you only hear when you're around people you've known your whole life. She held up a burnt hot dog with a grin. Is burning food genetic? I swear, you Jensens need to stay away from the grill. Margot's just like Matt, always charring dinner into charcoal. People laughed. My dad chuckled. A few nods of agreement. For a moment, the name drifted around the table like a breeze, but something caught in the air. A pause. A silence just a little too long, and then Uncle Ken frowned. Matt? Yeah, my mom said casually. Uncle Matt. And just like that, the warmth faded. The laughter stilled. Eyes drifted across the table like clouds passing over the moon. Slow, confused. My Aunt June tilted her head. Matt's not your brother, Liz. He's a Jensen. No, my dad said slowly. He's your brother, honey. I mean, you've told me that story about him ruining dinner 3 times. What? My mom's voice was suddenly thin. No, he's not. She paused, blinked, looked at her hands, looked at the table. Wait, whose brother is he? Part 2. The photos, the phone, and the missing man. It started like a joke. You know the kind. The ones that spiral into family debates about who remembers what, who said what, and who actually brought the potato salad. All right, my mom said, laughing nervously. Let me just settle this. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her old photos. She found one from childhood. A worn, scanned image she'd saved years ago. A family photo. Her, Grandpa, Grandma, Uncle Paul, Aunt June. But no Matt. Aunt Margot frowned. She pulled up her own photo from around the same time. A birthday party, maybe. There was my dad, Aunt Susan, their parents, a dog in the corner. But no Matt. The table grew quiet. No one said it outright, but the realization passed between us like a shadow overhead. He wasn't in any of them. One by one, phones came out. Photos flipped, memories searched. None of us could find him. Not in the backgrounds. Not at weddings. Not even at birthdays where we swore he had told that joke, the one he always told. The one about the raccoon and the peanut butter jar. It didn't make sense. I remembered seeing him just last week. He came over to help me with a math assignment. I remembered the way he explained things. Slow, patient, always with some dumb movie reference I didn't understand. And yet, when I opened my phone, there were no messages, no calls, no contact, nothing. He was gone, not just physically, but digitally. White, clean. Someone suggested calling him. No one had his number. Not even my mom. We stared at each other, the silence stretching thinner and thinner, as if something fragile was being pulled between us. Then Uncle Andrew pulled out a photo. "This has to be him," he said. It was the back of a man's head, bald, tall, walking away at a family reunion. "That's not him," Aunt June said. "He had long red hair, curly." "No," someone else whispered. "He had black hair." "Didn't he?" I tried to remember, and failed. The face I thought I knew blurred the harder I focused on it, like trying to hold on to smoke. How do you forget the face of someone you love? How do you remember everything, except who they are? Part 3. The Whiteboard. Conflicting memories and unease. We moved inside as the night deepened. The laughter was gone now. The easy chatter dissolved into murmurs and unfinished sentences. My younger cousins were ushered downstairs with snacks and cartoons, while the rest of us gathered in the kitchen, hunched over a blank whiteboard. Aunt Margot propped on the counter like we were planning a crime scene. "Let's just write it all down," someone said. And so we did. Matt's height, his voice, the kinds of shirts he wore, the way he walked, what he laughed at. But the words didn't agree. Someone wrote tall. Someone else erased it and put medium. One person said his hair was dark brown. Another remembered red curls. Another, no hair at all. Some swore he wore glasses. Others couldn't remember ever seeing him in a pair. We wrote down stories, fishing trips, movie nights, Christmas dinners, but every story contradicted the last. Sometimes he was there, sometimes he wasn't. Sometimes multiple people remembered being there together and still saw completely different versions of him. We weren't remembering a person. We were remembering suggestions, ideas, variants, something pretending to be whole. My mother stared at the whiteboard, like it might blink. "He was always just there," she whispered. "But never from anywhere." That sentence chilled me. It didn't make sense, but it felt true. We'd always assumed he belonged. Someone's brother, someone's uncle. No one ever questioned it. Until we did. Part 4. The night grows long. And Matt was still there. The sun had long disappeared by the time the whiteboard filled with contradictions. Somewhere in the back room, a pot of coffee brewed, and no one dared mention how late it was getting. No one left. It wasn't a conscious decision, more like something unspoken had gripped the room. A fog that made time feel distant, unreal. I stayed up with the adults while the younger cousins were ushered to the basement. Only my older cousin Maddie argued, rolling her eyes, claiming she didn't care about any of this. But I cared, because I remembered Matt, or thought I did. And the more we spoke of him, the more those memories melted. His voice, his laugh, his shape, it all started slipping through my fingers like dust in a dream. We wrote down what we could. Matt was tall, bad at math, loved Jim Carrey movies, never had a mustache. That was it. All we agreed on, out of years of supposed memories, 4 fragile truths. When someone suggested calling the police, we realized something awful. We didn't know his last name. Not really. He'd always been Matt. Uncle Matt. That was enough. Until it wasn't. Around 2 or 3 a.m. I started counting mugs. There were 12. 12 coffee mugs. 12 half-eaten pizza crusts. 12 sleeping spaces in the living room. But only 11 of us. I stared at the numbers again. Counted the people. Counted the cups. Counted again. 12. Matt had been with us. He was still with us. I froze. "Everyone line up," I said. I want to try something. They didn't argue. Not that night. Not in that mood. 10 adults and me. 11. But when I walked the line, I counted 12. Every time. Even when we added one of the kids to double check, the number never changed. 12. And still, none of us could see him. Part 5. Fading memories, strange behaviors, and a quiet, lingering dread. We left my aunt's house later that afternoon. No one said it aloud, but the air had changed. We were no longer laughing. We didn't hug goodbye. We didn't mention Matt, not directly, but we all felt it. Something had been here. We all knew it. The extra mug, the extra plate. The fact that every time we counted there were too many of us. Even if we couldn't see him. Even if we couldn't remember him clearly anymore. The weeks that followed were worse. Not because he showed up, but because we started to remember him again. Only now, the memories were wrong. He hadn't helped me with homework. He'd stood in my kitchen for hours once, stacking and unstacking bowls without speaking. Uncle Paul remembered Matt bringing him a wrapped Christmas gift. Dozens of hammers, all labeled with different names. Someone else said Matt used to read bedtime stories to the kids, but not books, manuals, instructions for blenders and toasters. The memories had shifted, like something inside them had rotted. They weren't nostalgic anymore. They were unnerving. One of my cousins recalled waking up at night to find Matt in the hallway, just standing there, smiling, not saying a word. Another remembered him floating the idea of replacing all the spoons in the house with knives. And still, no one could find him. No last name, no address, no photo, just echoes, whispers. A virus in the shape of a man. Now, whenever we gather for dinner, someone always jokes about leaving out an extra plate. Set one for Matt, they laugh. Just in case. And sometimes, I catch them pausing. Like they've just remembered something they shouldn't. Like they feel it too. That heaviness in the room. That wrongness in the corners. That someone might be sitting just beyond the light. Watching. Listening. Inserting himself back into our story. Not because he belongs, but because we once believed he did. And now, that's enough. Next, listen to what someone else experienced. I found home videos of my family. Part 1. Soft grief, familiar spaces, uneasy curiosity. It started with something simple. I was packing for college. Just moving boxes, folding sweaters. But some doors open more than rooms, and some memories come back, breathing. The door to my brother's room had stayed closed for years. 11 of them, to be exact. Since the day he drowned in the lake 2 streets over, my parents never touched it. They tried once, but couldn't follow through. The grief was too thick, like fog you can't walk through without getting lost. So the room became a sort of shrine. His shoes still under the bed, posters still curled on the walls. The scent of him faint, but stubborn, still clinging to the corners. I was 7 when he died. He was 13. Now I'm 18, standing in the hallway, one box under my arm, watching the sun stain the carpet outside his door. I hadn't planned to go in. Maybe grab a hoodie, a book, something small. I could bring with me when the homesickness hit. Not a big moment, just something quiet to hold on to. I'd been in the room before, of course, to sit, to remember, but I'd never gone digging. Not until today. Not until I opened the bottom drawer of his dresser and found 3 blank DVDs, just labeled 1, 2, and 3. Part 2, Disc 1. Warped Memories and a Whisper in the Dark. The discs weren't labeled with anything else. No names. No handwriting, just plain silver, numbered in marker. I stared at them for a while, then gently set them back in the drawer. I wasn't looking to stir anything up. Not really. I just wanted a hoodie. But that night, I couldn't sleep. The drawer kept coming back to me. The discs, the way they felt in my hand, cold. A little too heavy. I kept seeing them in my mind, like they were still sitting beside me, calling. I know how that sounds. Like melodrama. Like curiosity dressed up in mystery. But it wasn't just curiosity. It was something deeper, heavier. Like my chest had been tied to the dresser drawer with thread I couldn't see. Eventually I gave in. I crept across the hallway, silent on the old floorboards, slipped into my brother's room like I had so many times before, locked the door. The old TV buzzed faintly to life, the kind with a soft hum behind the static, like it's breathing when you're not paying attention. The DVD player blinked away. I put in disc 1. It began with static, then flickers. The picture cleared. Only half. The resolution was terrible. The footage warped like a heat wave twisting the air. It looked like our living room, but wrong. The furniture too tall. The lamp in the corner shaped odd. The walls shifting subtly whenever the frame moved. Sometimes it looked like a hallway. Sometimes a bedroom. Nothing stayed still. No faces. No clear shapes. Just shadows that didn't match the voices. Because there were voices. Laughter. The sound of dishes clinking. A voice that sounded like my mom, calling my brother's name from another room. Familiar, distant. Like hearing your own past underwater. And then, his laugh. My brother's laugh. It hit me like a wave. Warm and horrible. My breath caught. My skin prickled. It was him. I could feel it. And then, another voice. Low. Careful. Unmistakably present. You haven't noticed yet. The screen cut to black. Part 3. The replay. An impossible date, and a closer voice. I sat frozen. My hands were numb, pressed against my knees. I don't remember when I'd started shaking. It wasn't the footage. Exactly. It was the feeling. The way my brother's laughter filled the room. Warm and real and alive. And how quickly it was swallowed by that other voice. You haven't noticed yet. I ejected the disc. Threw it across the room without thinking. It clattered against the dresser and rolled under the bed. And then I just sat there, trying to breathe, trying to think. But the silence in that room felt thick, like the air had gone stale, curling around my ears like fingers. Eventually, I crawled across the carpet and retrieved the disc. My hands were shaking too badly to hold it properly. But I put it back in. I needed to hear it again. Not the voice. Not his laugh. That's all I wanted. I pressed play and paused every few seconds, squinting at the screen, hoping something would make sense. But the frames twist. Rooms that didn't quite exist. Walls too narrow. Shadows that flickered against logic. And then, just before he laughed, I paused again. That's when I saw it. Faint. Yellow. Burned into the corner of the screen like an old timestamp. July 30th, 2015. My breath caught. That wasn't possible. That was 7 months after my brother drowned. I tried to explain it away. The camera was wrong. The settings were off. Glitch. Bad encoding. A mistake. But no matter how many times I told myself that, the air in the room just kept getting colder. I hit play again. His laugh filled the space. And for a moment I let myself believe. Maybe it really was an old video. Maybe the date didn't matter. But then, The voice returned. Closer now, right against the mic. Wet, broken, crackling, like static. You noticed. Part 4. The pull of the other discs, and the sound of dripping footsteps. I didn't sleep. Not really. I crawled back under my covers like I was 7 years old again, hoping the blankets might protect me from whatever had just spoken. But sleep didn't come, because I could still feel them. The other 2 discs, waiting. They weren't just sitting on the shelf. They weren't even in the room. But I could feel them, like a pressure behind my eyes, a quiet thrum in my chest. They weren't finished. I've spent the last few hours lying awake, trying to convince myself that there's a rational explanation. Old footage, a mislabeled date. My grief filling in the gaps. But deep down, I know better, 'cause I've never heard my brother laugh that way in any memory. It was older, fuller. Like he'd lived longer than he ever had the chance to. And that voice, it wasn't recorded. It wasn't background noise. It spoke to me like it knew I was watching. You noticed, not just a warning, a beginning. It's raining now. The house is quiet. The faucet in the bathroom drips like it always has. But tonight, it sounds different. Slower, louder. Like something wet is moving through the hallway. A footstep, a pause, another drip. I haven't touched the other discs. Not yet. But I can feel them pulling. Like a hook, somewhere just beneath the skin. And I'm starting to wonder if those videos aren't just about him, but about me. Close your eyes as I share the next secret. A stranger approached my car. Part 1. Caution, comfort, and a quiet decision. It happened on one of those nights where everything feels heavier. The air, the silence, even the hunger in your chest. I just wanted a quiet meal. But sometimes quiet isn't the same as safe. I've always been careful. Crosswalks. Well-lit parking lots. My phone shared with my mom and sister. A digital trail I never let go cold. And above all, I never lingered in my car once I'd closed the door. Except for that night. I had just picked up a late shift for a friend. And by the time I left the store, it was after midnight. The sky was still. And the lot outside my favorite grocery store was empty. Nothing but painted lines and quiet. I should have gone straight home, but something about the silence invited me to stay. The breakup. The silence at home. The cold food in the fridge. Instead, I pulled out a container of dinner, parked under a dim street lamp, and queued up an old episode of The Terror on my phone. It was peaceful. Just me, the flicker of the screen, and the comfort of something familiar. And then a voice, sharp, urgent. I looked up. A woman was standing in front of my car, waving her arms. I hadn't seen her approach. One moment, I was alone. The next, she was there. Close, too close. She stepped to my window. Her finger tapped the glass, then pointed down. The universal roll-it-down gesture.
But I didn't. I kept the doors locked.
And that's when she said it. Hey, there's someone in your back seat. Part 2. The mirror. The smile and the face. That wasn't right. My heart seized. Every nightmare I'd ever tucked away rushed forward at once. Someone in the back seat. I reached for the door handle without thinking. Muscle memory. Panic. But something in me hesitated. Just long enough to look up. The rearview mirror showed only silence. No movement. No figure crouched in the shadows. Just the empty back seat and the vague blur of the store behind me. Still, I twisted in my seat, heart hammering, Breath caught tight in my chest. Nothing. No one. I let out a trembling breath, just in time to hear the click. I turned forward again. The woman was now pressed closer to my window. Her hand was on the door handle. She tried it. Once, twice, a little jerk each time. The door held. She smiled. Not a comforting smile, not even an apologetic one. It was private, like we'd shared some secret I didn't remember, and that's when I really saw her face. There was something wrong with it. Not broken, not grotesque, just off, like it had been assembled from memory, and someone got the ratios wrong. Her skin was stretched too tightly across her skull, her eyes too deep, and her mouth too wide and thin, like it had been cut into place with a dull blade. Her teeth, what little I could see of them, were too many, too small. My stomach turned. I don't remember shifting into gear. I don't remember looking away. All I remember is the engine lurching as I reversed. For a moment, she kept pace with me. Her hand gripped the handle, her feet moving in step with the car. And then she let go. I didn't stop to look back. Part 3. Home isn't safe. A voice at the door and a truth that doesn't fit. 20 minutes later, I was home. Safe, I told myself. The lights were on. The doors were locked. My car was parked, but the quiet didn't feel right. I moved from window to window, double-checking locks I already knew were secure. Every shadow in the hallway stretched a little too far. Every creak of the floor made me turn. I tried to sleep. I tried to believe I'd escape, but sleep didn't come. Instead, a loud knock shattered the silence. I bolted upright in bed. The clock read 4:17 a.m. Another knock, hard, urgent, like someone pounding with their fist. I crept toward the door, heart hammering, and then a voice. Hello? It's Brian. I paused. Brian was my neighbor. We weren't close, but I saw him walking his dog nearly every morning. Bailey, an old golden retriever with stiff legs and a wagging tail. I felt relief start to rise, until something in his tone caught me. His voice cracked, cleared his throat. Do you have someone over right now? What? I called back, nerves suddenly sharp. No. Why? I was letting the dog out. And I saw someone in your window. Someone who didn't look quite right. The silence between us thickened. A cold dread crawled back into my skin. She followed me home. I stepped back from the door. Are you all right, Brian? I asked. Another pause. Then his voice shifted, just slightly.
Of course. Just a cold.
I wanted to check in. It didn't sound like him anymore. Not exactly. That's when I asked, Brian, isn't your dog a girl? Silence. No answer. The door handle turned, slow at first, then tugged, hard, then a bang. A full body slam against the wood. I held my breath. Another moment passed. Then, quiet. I inched toward the window and gently pulled back the curtain. A figure was walking down the street, slowly. Not running, not hiding. Just walking away. I couldn't see the face, but I knew it was her. Part 4. The glimpses, the doubt, and the final warning. I didn't sleep again. Not then. Not after. I spent the rest of the night pacing the edges of the house, checking locks I'd already checked 10 times before. I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, running it all over in my mind. Maybe it was a dream. That's what I kept telling myself. A nightmare stitched together from fear, from exhaustion, from the sight of that woman's smile in the parking lot. But no dream had ever felt so vivid. No dream had ever known my neighbor's name. No dream had ever reached for my door handle. By morning, the sunlight made everything look ordinary again. Too ordinary. And yet I still catch myself staring at the corners of the room, convinced I'll see her there. Thin face, deep eyes, that stretched smile that didn't belong to anyone human. Sometimes I think I do see her, just for a flicker, a shadow too tall at the window, a pale shape moving behind me in the reflection of the glass. Gone the moment I look directly at it. And sometimes, when I walk down the street, I wonder how many others she's spoken to. How many others have listened to a stranger's warning and opened their doors. So, if you ever hear it, that urgent knock, that familiar voice calling from outside, or if a stranger leans close to your car window and whispers, "Check your back seat," don't. Because some warnings aren't meant to keep you safe. They're meant to draw you out. Next, listen to what someone else experienced. I found my wife's obituary online, Part 1. It started with something small, a passing curiosity. Late at night, in the quiet glow of my laptop screen, I'd searched for old friends, places I'd lived, even myself before. But I'd never searched for her. I spend too much time online. Most nights, long after she's gone to bed, I'll still be at the computer, scrolling, Googling, wandering into the stranger corners of the internet, like I'm walking through memories that don't belong to me. I've searched everything. My own name, names of people I used to know, faces I barely remember from high school, conspiracies, half-lies, small-town folklore. But last night, I typed in her name, just her name. Emily. No reason, just curiosity. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe I'd run out of things to scroll. Or maybe some quiet, invisible part of me had been waiting to type those letters for years. And the first result was an obituary. At first I laughed to myself. Emily's name isn't rare. It had to be someone else. But I clicked anyway. And there she was. The photo was small, grainy, but it was her. Her eyes, her smile, her blonde streaked hair pulled behind one ear, just like she still wears it. The name, the birthday, the year she died. 1986, 2012. I met Emily in 2013. We've been married for 6 years. And she's asleep downstairs. Part 2. The obituary, the memorials, and the door opening. I told myself it had to be wrong. Some mistake. Some other woman who happened to share her name, her face, her birthday. But the words on the screen pulled that hope apart. Her love of horses. Her years in biology research. The soup kitchen she volunteered at. Every detail matched. Not vaguely. Not close enough. Perfectly. I scrolled down, my breath shallow. Comments, condolences, old posts about grief. A Facebook memorial page, filled with strangers who called her by the same name I whispered when we first met. A university statement, speaking of her kindness, her loss, and the date. Always the date. Dead in 2012. I met her in 2013. What you looking at? Her voice right beside me. I slammed the laptop shut. My pulse jumped so hard it hurt. Nothing, I blurted. Then, fumbling for cover. Birthday ideas. For you. For a heartbeat, her expression didn't change. It was still, almost watchful. Then, she smiled. That warm, familiar smile. The one I'd fallen in love with. "That's sweet," she said softly. curling close to me on the couch. I forced myself to smile back, but her warmth against my side made my skin crawl with cold. A few minutes later, I excused myself, said I was tired, said I needed to lie down. She pouted playfully. I climbed the stairs anyway, my throat dry, my chest tight. Upstairs in the dark, I opened the page again. The obituary stared back, her smile my wife's smile, frozen in a photo I'd never seen, beneath words that declared her gone. My hands trembled as I kept scrolling, and then I found it. A news article, no photo, no image, just words that hollowed me out. No signs of forced entry, partially dismembered, killer still at large, murdered. Not just dead, murdered. I gripped the phone, my mind racing, trying to deny, trying to explain, but before I could breathe, the door to the bedroom creaked open. Part 3. The bedroom. A shadowed face, a whisper, and the lie of love. The door creaked, slow, careful. Emily stood in the doorway. The hall light was off, her face swallowed by shadow. I couldn't see her eyes, only her outline. Still, watching. Emily? My voice cracked. I came up to check on you, she said softly. Too softly. Her tone was kind, but there was a thinness to it. Like words being recited, not spoken. I scrambled to shut the obituary on my phone, slipping it behind me beneath the blanket. I'm fine, I lied quickly. Feeling better now. Really. A pause. A moment too long. Then, I'm glad to hear that, she whispered. She moved toward the bed, each step slow, deliberate, like she was measuring the distance. She slid in beside me. The mattress dipped, the warmth of her skin pressed against mine. But it didn't feel warm. Not truly. It felt cold beneath the surface. Her arms coiled around me. Her breath brushed my ear. I love you, she whispered. I forced the words out. I love you too. But my chest was ice, my throat a knot, and lying there in the dark, I knew this wasn't my wife. Part 4. The fade out. Doubt, theories, and the uneasy truth. She sleeps beside me now, her arm draped across my chest, her breathing even steady, comforting. If I could let myself believe it, but I don't. Not anymore. Because the obituary is still open on my phone, hidden beneath the blanket. Because I can still see her photo there. The same smile, the same eyes with words carved underneath. Beloved daughter, friend. Taken too soon. Dead at 26. I met her at 27. The dates don't bend. The memorial posts don't vanish. The article about her murder doesn't rewrite itself. And yet she lies here, warm, breathing, whispering love in the dark. I've tried to reason with it. Maybe she had a twin, maybe she faked her death. Maybe the internet stitched some stranger's story into hers. And I've fallen into a cruel trick of coincidence. But none of it fits, because when she smiled at me tonight, it wasn't quite the same smile. Because when she stood in the doorway, her face shadowed, her voice softened just enough to sound rehearsed. Whoever, whatever this is beside me, isn't Emily. And now, lying here in the dark, I don't dare move. I don't dare breathe too loud. Because if she isn't Emily, then she already knows I've seen it. And if she already knows, then she isn't sleeping at all. As the night deepens, so does the mystery. I am the sole remaining employee. Part 1. Chlorine Ghosts and Summer Echoes. It started with a summer job. Wet footprints, tinny ride music, and the soft, clean smell of chlorine that clung to everything. But the season ends, the water stills, and sometimes the quiet keeps breathing. I was 17 when the park felt like the whole world. Hot concrete, sunburned shoulders, radios crackling with lifeguard jokes that weren't funny but felt like belonging anyway. Back then, everything was noise and motion. Kids shrieking as they splashed, parents fumbling for towels, the lazy river forever pretending to be tired. On my breaks, I'd drift beneath the Dragon Slayer, where the beams stayed cool and the drip, drip, drip turned cigarettes to soggy mistakes. I can still smell the ash on Ellen's fingers, still hear the cars clacking overhead. We were young and always almost laughing. In those days, the park was just a place, a job, a handful of little stories I thought I'd forget. Then, 22 came, and with it winter. "Stick around," the manager said. "Just keep the lights on. Walk the rounds." 4 months, easy money. 4 months alone. A trailer by the maintenance shed, a space heater that groaned. Gas reimbursements that never covered the miles. Security and janitor rolled into one, he joked, as if a joke could warm the dark. I told him I'd do 1 winter and be gone by March. Back to school. Maybe. Construction with my dad, if it came to it. Somewhere people slept at night. I'm 38 now. I never left. The checks have different signatures these days. The fence is newer. 8 feet, metal teeth, a single locked gate that creaks in the wind. Some suits came after that girl made the news camera vans in the lot, lights bouncing off the old slides. The suits had pistols, pale faces, a hurry in their steps, like men who'd just realized the ocean is deeper than the map. They gave me the keys and drove away too fast, fishtailing on the gravel. One of them glanced back at the dark, and I recognized the look. It's the same one I've learned to wear when the tarps breathe at night. The first winter wasn't bad. Not really. Empty paths. Tarpaulins stretched across still water like skin. A wind that sounded like whispers and never quite said anything. Some nights, the tinny music turned itself on and rattled against the cold metal rails. Some mornings the changing stalls held wet floors that should have dried days ago. If you don't think too hard, you can call it settling. Pipes, air, memories. Then spring slipped on me like slick tile and I went down hard, left arm, lower back, a spray of pain that never fully left. The owner handed me a stack of compensation and a promise: heal up here, do nothing. Just be around. I meant to leave after that. The winter came back anyway, and with it, the quiet, heavier now, as if something had been practicing. Part 2. Winter Lessons. Small tricks, long fingers, and the taste of salt. The second winter was different. I don't know if it was the pain or the pills or the way the clouds seemed to kneel lower over the slides. Maybe it was just that I had started paying attention. Things moved. Not far. Just enough to be wrong. A stack of cones shifted from one side of the path to the other. An out-of-order sign vanished, then reappeared nailed to a different gate with the wrong screws. Wet footprints ended exactly where the tarp began, with no prints entering and none leaving. A friend brought his girlfriend for a few nights, back when I still pretended the park could be shared. She woke us with a scream at dawn, pointing at the shallow pool, swearing something had climbed out and circled the ladder. By the time we looked, only the water moved. She had a bite on her ankle shaped like nothing I recognized. Narrow, too many points. They left before noon. The gravel spat them out. I started finding little tests. A wallet, half open, placed on a lounge chair, dragged into a clean square of moonlight. A phone vibrating somewhere beneath a maintenance hatch, ringing a number that never displayed. The first night, the trailer door banged wide in the wind. I muttered a string of tired curses to prove I wasn't afraid. The second night, I found the drowned possum on my kitchen table, fur matted with chlorinated water, puddle shining beneath. No tracks on the linoleum, no smell until I'd broken the seal of the door. The tent felt safer after that, thin walls but honest ones. I pitched it just beyond the trailer's chlorine stink, zipped it open to the cold, and lay listening to the tarps shiver. When the trailer door banged again, I got up. The zipper was closed when I turned back. I knew I hadn't done that. There are moments when your mind splits politely in two. One side offers mercy. You're mistaken. You're tired. The other just puts its hands on your shoulders and asks you to listen. I crouched, every muscle arguing with the gravel, and slid my fingers to the zipper. Nothing inside. I crawled in, sealing myself into nylon and breath. I told myself it was all nerves, that fear has the same shape no matter what's behind it. Then a hand pressed against the tent wall. Long fingers, thin as knife points, spread wide, the palm no bigger than a golf ball, fabric straining, whispering, groaning. I rolled the tent. It sounds ridiculous now, like a slapstick bit in a story that's forgotten how to laugh. But fear will make you do clumsy things. I rolled until the zipper lost itself under me, until the breath left my chest and came back thin and windy. When I crawled free at last, there was no one in the gravel, just two wet footprints leading toward the nearest tarp, dark water we notched closed each winter like a wound. I did not lift it. I slept inside, gagging on the possum's sweet rot, hating the warmth because it meant I had to stay. The days learned a new trick, the smell of salt. Not chlorine, not pond scum, salt. Standing by the big pool in the weak sun, I'd smell the ocean, thousands of miles from any coast. I'd taste the air like it remembered waves, and always at the edge of vision. A flicker of starlight, the faintest dizzy tilt, as if the water had been taught a different horizon. Once, the boys' bathroom door held me until I blistered my heel on the steel. No one on the other side. No footstep walking away, only my breath turning to steam, and the tarps shifting. I learned a new rule. Don't play. When the shower runs, let it. When the staff room lights glow at 3 in the morning, close the bedroom door and sleep with your jacket on. If the faucet flows in a locked stall, wish it well. Most nights, it lets you be, but not all. Part 3. The pool opens. A drifter. A fall and an ocean. With no surface. By the third winter, I'd stopped pretending I would quit. The park had a gravity I couldn't explain, like a coin cupped in a magician's palm. The new order came from a court somewhere. Someone had to be on site at all hours now. Fewer accidents if someone was listening. We tried. A drifter found warmth in the brick restroom by the castle pool. He had a plastic bag and a rattling cough and shoes that showed his heels. I told him he couldn't stay. He told me what I could do with myself. He headed, not for the gate, but for the fields beyond the old fence line. The night's first flakes starting to swirl. Look, I called, voice shaking more than it should have. It's late. Let me. He slipped. It took less than a second. Feet sideways, head first. A sound like someone striking a piano string inside my teeth. The blood that came was the wrong color, in the sodium light paintball red. Too bright, two teeth spun across the tile. For a moment, I could hear nothing but the high, thin ringing in my ears and the little practical things. There's blood in me. It looks like that. If it leaves, I'll stop. The world narrowed to sharp edges. Then a soft sound. Something dragged. His legs had gone under the tarp. He blinked at me, the look a hurt dog would give, baffled, trusting the big hand that could help. He slid into the water without a splash. I hit the motor, watched the cover roll, everything metallic and too slow, watched the heavy sheet fold away like the lid of an old secret. The pool was spotless. No cloud of blood, no shadow stirring, no man, only a few fall leaves clinging to the drains. Then the water changed. It didn't ripple. It didn't surge. It overlapped, like the moment your eyes catch a hollow cube and see it two ways at once. Something in the pool stepped sideways into itself and came back larger than it had any right to be. There, in the clean rectangle of winter water, I was suddenly looking at every ocean I had ever seen and all the ones I hadn't. Flat gray panes broken by distant white, black, green depth with fingers of kelp reaching from below the glossy sheen of a flooded basement, with the light from a stairwell shivering on the surface. I smelled salt rot, coil after coil of damp rope. I tasted rust. Far below, something turned so vast it hid the stars. It swam beneath. I don't remember falling. I remember lying in the blood their head had left, staring at a sky that felt wrong, too near, too curious. Morning brought the old practicalities back. The cover only rolled one way, so I took a pool hook and dragged it, breath shallow, headlight. The water stayed water when I looked at it, but the tilt stayed in my gut, the knowledge of a size my mind had been warned not to hold. Spring came and the kids laughed in that same pool. I stepped behind a hedge and threw up quietly where no one would hear, wiping my mouth like a man who'd caught the flu. That was when I understood. The park wasn't wrong like a broken pipe or a badly wired light. It wasn't anything so small. It was a mouth, not hungry all the time, maybe, but patient and older than we could call it. Part 4. Castle at Night. Rowboat, girl, and the thing that watches like weather. The last time I walked the park at night, I did it because someone shouted, a voice, thin and far, sliced into my sleep at 3 in the morning. Cold poured over me before I'd found my boots. By the time I unlatched the gate and followed the path toward the castle pool, the scream had ended and the quiet had turned worse than noise. Their van was parked crooked near the fence. College kids with cameras, the kind who glide through ruins and call it exploration. They'd scouted me well. I hadn't seen them come. A neat pile of rucksacks and a tripod waited at the edge of the water. A rowboat knocked a hollow rhythm against the tiles. I might have left the boat for the daylight, if not for the sound of something pulling itself onto plastic steps, the soft slap of skin that had forgotten how to be warm. My light found a girl turned gray with water. Her clothes clung to her like old paper. Her hair hung in threads. She crawled to the lowest platform, curled into herself, and stared across an ocean that only looked like a pool. Something circled beneath. You can tell when a thing is under a skin by the way the skin shifts. The scum bulged and slid. Where the water cleared, I saw a pale flank, a slow sweep of something like a fin. The castle shuddered when it bumped the supports. The girl flinched but did not look at me. Whatever she'd seen below had already taught her where to look. I thought about waiting. Morning is safer. Light smears the edges of the bad dream. Things that come up to the surface seem smaller then, as if the sun had burned their names away. But the castle groaned, and the winter plastic was brittle, and she had eyes full of a word I could only guess at by sound: stars. I pulled the boat in. It rocked like a paper dish. The oars found the water, and something enormous slipped deeper, as if playing kindly to keep me brave. Halfway out, the surface rose on one side, then the other. Bowls of water lifting and settling without breaking. When I looked down, it was the same trick as before. No bottom, just a shape moving like time. Not a fish. Not exactly. Not anything with a name you could store under your tongue without bleeding. It nudged the boat once, gentle. A test. We made the steps and I tied off to the lowest rung. The girl let me guide her upright until she saw the boat and fought me like a cornered thing. I whispered lies. I needed to believe. It's okay. It's over. It's only water. The boat exploded upward with a slap that rained cold across our faces. We watched the shape arc in the dark flip crash onto tile 100 feet away. Then silence, as if a hand had closed over the pool again. The castle shook. The bolts in the joints wept brown water. I took her hand and led her up toward the red turret, where kids once counted to 10 before sliding down. The ladder rungs were slick. I slipped and bit my tongue hard enough to taste iron. She went on without looking back. For a heartbeat, the petty hurt of it nearly pinned me. Then the whole structure listed. Water licked the lower platforms. The turret we crouched on floated, groaned, and broke free like an old tooth. When it dropped, it sank to our waists and then bobbed up again, hollow plastic pretending to be a boat. We paddled with our hands, whispering prayers to no one that we didn't say out loud. The edge came near, bumped, scraped. We dragged ourselves over it on shivering elbows and lay panting on the cold tile. She cried then. Not sobs. Not yet. A thin, animal sound. I rolled onto my back and watched the sky moving slow and indifferent. We might have stayed that way until the pale thickened to morning, if not for the shape that rose from the water. I don't have the words for the face. Maybe that's for the best. I have the feeling. A mind like weather, not cruel, not kind, just convinced of itself. It watched us as a child watches a beetle, curious, patient, and if it understood the beetle's fear, it didn't believe in it enough to stop. Something that might have been a mouth opened without opening. The water bulged, and a second shape, a human one, surfaced near the far ladder, hands spreading against nothing, eyes too bright. The thing took him and didn't hurry. The girl made a small sound once, and then none. We woke on the tile in the morning. The paramedics came after the police and before the suits. She said stars until they gave her sleep. I told everyone I found the fence cut and the van abandoned and the lot empty. I didn't mention the boat, or the plastic turret, or the thing that watches without malice, because the word doesn't fit. The world prefers paperwork. Let it. I don't walk the park at night anymore. Even the days tilt now. Grass threads through the tile. Algae turns the water, the color of engine oil. Sometimes the salt wind finds me inland, and I have to sit down until the horizon learns itself again. Some mornings I wake coughing brine that isn't supposed to be in a lung. There's a number on the back of my paycheck. I hold it, sometimes, pressing the paper between thumb and forefinger until the ink warms. I imagine calling, asking where the money comes from and what they'd say if I said I was leaving. I imagine a voice I can't place telling me it's fine, that someone else will take the gate key and keep the rounds, that I can go anywhere people sleep without listening. I imagine the tarps breathing. I think of Ellen under the Dragon Slayer, her damp cigarette, the way she held out her leg and told me to feel the places she'd missed with the razor. Living comes to you in small, stupid moments. You never know which ones will be the ones you keep. There's an abyss under this place, and I don't mean the water. It's the size of what you learn and can't unlearn. I used to think I'd understand it if I stayed long enough. That's what kept me here, I think. The hope that what you can name will stop being afraid of you. But this isn't a thing that fits in a mouth. It isn't even a thing that fits in a day. The past is a trick. That's what I've learned. It's the smell of chlorine clinging to a shirt you haven't worn in years. It's a rowboat knocking softly in the wind. We call it memory, because that makes it ours. But some nights I can hear the ocean under the tarp. Not roaring, not even moving. Just there, patient as a closed eye. If I stay, I think I will forget how to wake. So I sit at the trailer table, with the door locked, and the chairs braced, and the possum's absence still somehow stinking in the air. And I press the number with my thumb, until my skin leaves a print. Maybe tomorrow, I tell myself. Maybe when the wind is quieter, when the tarps don't breathe, when the fence stops humming with snow. Or maybe I'll go now, before the park remembers my name, before the water does, before something large and curious looks up from the stars. It is swallowing and decides. I'd make a fine little story to tell itself, in the long dark winters that never end. For 13 years, I watched a house from above, and then it began to watch back. It started as a quiet, harmless habit, a way to pass an empty afternoon with a map and the small thrill of looking down on other lives. I wasn't searching for anything in particular, just drifting over fields and rooftops and rivers until a corner of England held my attention. There was a neat little house, a trim garden, a square of lawn stitched to farmland like a patch on an old coat, and in the grass, a long T-shaped shadow. I told myself it was a scarecrow. I told myself it didn't matter. And for a while it didn't. I was a teenager then, and my attention moved like birds. Quick arcs over bright things, never settling long. But some places lodge in you quietly, like a seed in a pocket you forget to empty. When I went back years later, 2016, a night soaked in cheap whiskey and idle mysteries, that neat garden was still there. So was the shadow. Not one, now, two. Both T-shaped, one smaller than the first. Odd, Oliver murmured, hunched beside me at the laptop, the bottle breathing out between us. He was better at understatement than I was. He leaned close, squinting at the hedges that walled the property in, at the farmland stretching away like a quiet ocean. Residential, he added, frowning. Not a farm. Why would they need scarecrows? I didn't know. I wasn't even sure I cared. The bottle softened the edges of curiosity, rounded fear into something you could slide past. We forgot again. 3 years later. We didn't. It was a winter evening in 2019. One of those cold, clean nights where sounds travel farther than they should. The thought returned to him first. "Show me your strange house," he said, half smiling. "We found it like you find an old scar on your own skin, instinctively. The hedges, the lawn, the tidy roof, and there, across the grass, 2 long, T-shaped shadows." The second was no longer small. It matched the first. A pair, The baby scarecrow is all grown up, Oliver said, trying on a laugh and then discarding it, as if it didn't fit. There is a peculiar kind of fear that arrives without a reason. You can feel it take shape long before you know what to call it. A hush that falls over the body. We looked at each other and then away, as if something were standing behind us and we didn't want to see it yet. Oliver lifted his phone and held out the blue route. 52 minutes in a neat, dotted line. Let's go. We're not driving an hour to peer at some hedges, I said, though I could already feel the quiet turning in me. The way it does when you've asked a question and the air around you has decided to answer. He didn't argue. Oliver never argued when the decision had already been made in him. He just stood, fetched his jacket, and handed mine across, like a ritual we'd performed 1,000 times. Street view won't lift over hedges, he said lightly, as if we were discussing camera angles. We need a different view. The lanes narrowed as we left the city, sky widening into that deep country black that makes your own headlights feel small. Cottages happened and then were gone, chimney smoke thinning into our slipstream. When we pulled onto the verge opposite the house, the silence greeted us like a thing with weight. It was unremarkable. Red brick curtained windows, a roof that would bake in summer. The hedges were tall and tended. There is a comfort in the ordinary, but sometimes the ordinary looks like a disguise. How? I began, and Oliver answered by opening the boot. The drone lay white and insect clean in its case, all blades and purpose. He lifted it as if it were nothing and set it on the tarmac. I didn't want to watch. I also didn't want to be the only one not watching. A familiar arrangement. He took it high enough to clear the hedge, angled the camera down, and let the garden resolve on the screen. We both stopped breathing. 2 crosses stood planted in the grass. Tall timber plain as gallows. Ropes bound the shapes to them. Not shapes. People. Oliver lowered the drone before I could tell him not to. The rotors hummed like trapped hornets. The feed stuttered and then steadied. The first figure was a boy. A young teenager, narrow shoulders trembling against the strains. His arms forced wide, wrists cinched to raw. His shirt was torn to the skin, and letters had been cut there, each edge red and wet. Spawn. A thin sound escaped me. Oliver didn't speak. He took the drone slowly sideways. The second figure had once been a woman. Dungarees, a shirt, hair matted to her skull, but where her forearms and calves should have been, there was straw packed and bound where flesh had stopped. She was alive. She was breathing. The word carved across her chest was older, blacker at the edges. Horror. Oliver's fingers shook on the controls. The drone drifted. I saw the grass rise into focus. The blades individual and sharp, and then the image broke to static, snapped back, broke again. The sound that followed was not thunder, but it lived where thunder lives. The screen went gray. Down, Oliver whispered, though the drone had already fallen. The house remained a dark, attentive face. In an upstairs window, the curtains trembled, and a silhouette leaned forward. The gleam that followed was the reflective skin of a barrel. Move, I said, except I was already moving. Oliver started the car. We reversed the line we'd followed on the map with less elegance and more breath. The lanes swallowed us, bent us, let us go. For a while we drove like men crossing an unfenced cliff in fog. Slow, then fast, then slow again. Oliver pulled into a petrol station eventually, and the bright strip lights made the night look unreal. I said police, and he said evidence, and for a minute we were the same boys we had been, arguing about risk, pretending that the least frightening plan was also the most sensible. I'm paying, I said at last, shoving my card into my pocket. Then we call them. When I came back with the receipt, the place where the car had been was a shape made of absence. My phone rang and rang into a pocket he did not answer. I called the police instead. I said the words carefully, so they would not sound like a story. They arrived with a patience I recognized. Men and women who had looked at worse things in their time and learned to keep their faces still. They searched the property. They knocked on a red door and spoke with a man whose name I did not recognize. They walked his hedged boundaries with torches, walked his kitchen with eyes softened by lamplight, walked his garden with polite hands. They found nothing. The crosses weren't there. No ropes, no drone like a broken bone in the grass, no spent shells. The man behind the door smiled the small, affronted smile of someone accused of not being the person you thought he was. Statues, he said, amused. I did have a pair of wooden figures years ago, scarecrowish. My wife thought them charming for autumn. They've gone. The satellite is old. You know it often is. It's remarkable how quickly the air can thin around you when two people agree on something and you don't. We weren't saying you're lying, one officer told me gently. We're saying we need something we can hold. The footage from the petrol station gave me a shape to point at. Two men arrive. One leaves the other behind. The woman behind the counter remembers the boy who whispered, "Call the police," while his friend drove away. "Time," the officers said. "Let him cool down," they said. It's only been a few hours, then days, then the long, slow weeks that teach you how much time a phone can hold without ringing. When they finally took Oliver's disappearance seriously, they did it with care and paperwork. They spoke to neighbors, to landlords, to whichever friends I could name without sounding like I was making them up. They returned to the house on the lake. They found nothing again. Somewhere in all that, the world learned a new way to be afraid of breathing, and the news acquired a different gloss. I learned to check my windows twice, then 3 times. I learned to sleep lightly. I learned I didn't like the taste of my own fear. In the spring of 2020, letters began to find my letterbox, just paper, cut in the neat square of a printer. The words centered like something official. I watched too. Nobody will ever find them. Don't come back. You'll come forth. I held the last one against the glass of the window, looking for something underneath the words that might soften them. I tried to tell myself forth had been meant, that a man had taken a joy in ominous phrasing and tripped over his own foot. I stayed inside anyway. I joined a Facebook group for a nearby village under a name that wasn't mine. I learned the tone of local gossip, the warm cruelty people wrap in concern. In the threads from 2011, I learned about a farmer whose wife had died, and the new woman he took teaching him how to laugh again, and the frowns that followed from those who liked their memory of the first wife better. The farmer and the woman vanished not long after. The posts grew silent in the way a room does when someone kind has left it. I told the police about the old stories, and they nodded as if I'd told them the weather forecast. They knew. Everyone knows, in a way that manages to help no one. The proofs kept failing. Sometimes I wondered if proof was the wrong thing to ask from a place that had learned to be tidy. Time makes a fog, if you let it. Years soften into a handful of moments you carry like smooth stones. In early 2023, I picked up the last note again and found my own earlier mistake. Fourth, it had said, not a finger pointing forward, a number. I opened the map. There were 3 shadows now. Same hedges, same lawn, a third long T added to the pair. Neat as a knife laid beside cutlery. The human mind is capable of many arrangements. This is one of them. I knew the shape of Oliver in that line. I knew the weight of it without touching. I also knew that the knowing would not withstand the next hour if I let it, and so I placed it carefully on a shelf near the back of myself and closed the door. I told myself I would not go back there. I told myself something new would grow in that quiet. I told myself many things. There is a stillness you learn when you've spent years staring at a fixed point and then realize it has been staring back. It isn't the stillness of statues but of animals, alert, contained, ready to bolt and knowing it will not help. I found myself going back over the early days, not because they mattered more than the rest, but because they were lighter, and I wanted to remember what I had once considered enough. The first tea-shadow in the grass. The second coming to match it. The night outside the hedges with the drone buzzing like a trapped wasp in winter air. The way the light through an upstairs curtain can turn a man's shoulders into a shape too large. The hollow, careful voices of the officers who had been taught not to catch fear from the people they interviewed. If I had to explain the worst of it, the part that makes my mouth taste like old pennies, it wouldn't be the ropes or the carved words or the thought of straw where bones should be. It would be the ordinary edges that held everything together. The trimmed hedges, the steady roof, the front garden that knew how to green in spring, and the faces that sat as statues with polite eyes. Sometimes, late, I hear a sound in the lane that's too soft to be a car and too steady to be wind. I lie awake and listen to my own blood. Nothing knocks. Nobody breathes behind the curtains. Morning eventually makes the world look smaller again, and for a few hours I can make tea without watching the garden. I have tried to imagine walking up to the hedge and finding a gap. I have tried to imagine the way the grass would feel under my shoes. I have tried to imagine looking up and seeing the sky look away, embarrassed for us all. I cannot quite get to the part where I look at the crosses directly. Maybe the mind saves itself in small ways. Maybe it allows a person to stand a little to the side of the worst thing and keep breathing. I like to think Oliver would have forgiven me for learning that trick too late. He had a talent for confidence that made risk look like a joke. I wonder if he used it to climb into his own car when I watched him go, and if the silence that filled the next hour was our last conversation. The world, being itself, kept happening. People married. Delivery vans followed their maps through cul-de-sacs and ended their days with vans full of empty parcels. The street where I live learned to clap at windows for a time and then forgot how. The seasons turned. I got older in increments it was hard to measure, like a tide climbing an inch on a harbor wall. I checked the satellite view when new imagery appeared. It became a ritual as small and as significant as turning on a bedside lamp. 3 shadows remained. The lawn changed shade with the year. The hedges kept their line, and I learned to identify clouds by the modesty of the shadows they cast on fields. The notes stopped. I sometimes think that is worse, because it leaves a space for the mind to pour itself into. It leaves a quiet in which your own footsteps sound like someone else's, and the bright slit of the letterbox becomes a mouth that will open again when it chooses to. At the end of all this telling, there is nothing to offer you but the soft truth of how fear settles into a life. It doesn't arrive with a shout. It doesn't even always arrive with a reason. It just chooses a room and learns the shape of your furniture. And in time you forget how it looked before it moved in. I know where the house is. I know how long it takes to drive there on a winter evening, and how the hedges stand against the sky like black staves drawn on paper. I know what a garden looks like, from above, when it has decided to hold its breath. I could give you the name on the door. I could tell you the turn to take where the road narrows. I won't, because there are 3 shadows on that lawn, and a 4th is a number a person can be. And I have learned, over 13 years of staring and being stared at, that some places don't want to be looked at from above, because above is the only place you can still pretend you are safer than the things that live inside the hedges. So if you are the kind of person who drifts on maps when nights are long, if your finger falls on a neat patch of green beside a tidy roof, and you notice a pair of T-shaped strokes painted across the grass, let your curiosity be kind to you. Close the tap, make tea. Stand at the window and watch weather move through trees that only mean weather. And if one day you see a 3rd line appear, if you go perfectly still without knowing why, if a silence inside you draws a dotted blue route from where you are to somewhere you will not be safe, remember me. Remember that I wanted to know and now I do. Remember that it is possible to mistake watching for understanding. And remember that some gardens are better viewed only as a patchwork of color from very far away without shadows at all. Because from far above, the hedges are only tidy, the lawn only green. And from far above, there is no 4th. Next comes a story, wrapped in shadows. The rules at St. Francis Hospital. A new beginning. There's something comforting about the steady beep of heart monitors, the soft hum of fluorescent lights. In the stillness before dawn, when the world outside feels miles away, hospitals can seem almost safe. I used to believe that, before I came to St. Francis. Before I learned that, sometimes, rules are written, not to keep you safe, but to keep something else out. I arrived as a new doctor, exhausted, full of nerves, clinging to the last shreds of hope and ambition. The sort you only have before reality sets in. 8 years of medical school, endless nights, a parade of fluorescent-lit hallways. I'd given up more than sleep for this dream. But St. Francis Hospital was different. And in the end, it wasn't the long hours that aged me the most. It was the rules. Arrival. I remember that first day with strange clarity. July sun leaking through the glass doors, the lobby humming with anticipation. 19 of us, dressed in the same crisp coats, faces pale with uncertainty. Dr. Vivian Scritz swept into the room like a cold wind. She was all edges, razor-sharp words, immaculate hair, spectacles perched on the tip of her nose. She spoke with a chill authority, her voice echoing down the halls. 19 of you start today, she said, looking us over with a mixture of disappointment and amusement. And we've got a pool, going on how long you'll last. We laughed nervously, unsure if it was a joke. She didn't smile. I printed 18 sets of rules, she continued, so that one of you would be left behind. Life isn't fair, get used to it. My heart plummeted as I realized I was the one without a copy. I tried not to look as lost as I felt. Already, I could feel the walls pressing in. The first week there's a rhythm to hospital life, a kind of hypnotic repetition, shift after shift, hour after hour. You learn to move quietly, to watch and listen, to keep your head down and your thoughts to yourself. But Francis was never quite right. There was an undercurrent, something beneath the ordinary bustle, a tension that pressed into the spaces between footsteps and whispers. Colleagues disappeared, sometimes quietly, sometimes after moments of chaos. None of us would speak of again. Myron was the brightest of us all. He'd been top of his class, confident, quick with a reassuring word. If anyone was built to survive here, I thought, it would be him. I was wrong. The operating room. It was 3 in the morning when it happened. The kind of hour when even the ghosts are said to sleep. I was rushing through another consult, the hallways oddly empty, when I glimpsed Myron through the glass window of an operating room. He was alone. Or so I thought. I paused, unsettled by the frantic motion of his arms. Blood flickered against the sterile white of the room. Myron's back was to me, hunched over the table, his hands working with desperate speed. "Myron," I whispered, voice thin in the quiet. He didn't turn. I moved closer, each step heavy with dread, until I could see his abdomen had been split open, as if by some monstrous accident. His own organs spilled onto the table, a red, glistening nest of intestines and stomach. But Myron was alive. He was working methodically, with a surgeon's precision, carving ribbons of flesh from his own body, sweat streaming down his forehead. I couldn't scream. I couldn't even move. Then, slowly, Myron turned to look at me. His eyes were hollow, deep, endless wells of exhaustion. And then he smiled, not with joy, but with something ancient and empty. He stabbed a slice of his own stomach and lifted it to his lips. He chewed, he swallowed. He lunged at me, entrails catching on the table's edge, his body collapsing in a tangle of blood and sinew. Finally, he screamed. Aftermath. I didn't remember running. Not really. I remembered the cold shock of the corridor, the harsh fluorescent light, the way my heart rattled in my chest. Doctors arrived, calm, unhurried. They subdued Myron with tranquilizers, moving as if this was all routine. And in the silence that followed, I saw a piece of paper lying on the floor, its edge touched by blood, the words blurred but legible. I picked it up, hands trembling, and hurried away, hoping nobody saw. The rules in a janitor's closet, hidden beneath the drone of ventilation and the stench of ammonia. I read the list. St. Francis Hospital rules. Guidelines for new doctors never, under any circumstances, share your copy of the rules with anyone else. If any other doctor displays erratic behavior, leave the area immediately. Do not make eye contact. If any other doctor is approached or detained by someone in a janitor's uniform, do not interfere. Never ask about that former doctor again. Never touch any seemingly abandoned Reese's peanut butter cups. Those are Dr. Scrit's favorite candy. Any child that dies in St. Francis Hospital must be cremated within 120 minutes of official time of death. If you suspect this rule has been broken, alert Dr. Scrit, and the hospital will be evacuated. There is no children's burn unit at St. Francis Hospital. If you find yourself there, continue walking until you return to familiar territory. This usually requires traveling in a straight line down the central hallway for 47 minutes. You will not reach a wall during that interval. This rule is on a need-to-know basis. A small quantity of sulfuric acid is kept in every room. This is only intended for use on patients with severed spinal cords. If they attack, a hypodermic injection of H2SO4 into the cranium is the only way to subdue the subject. The morgue must house at least 13 cadavers at all times. If you find yourself on the hospital roof with no memory of how you got there, you have only two choices. Either wait for an extraction team to find you, or jump 4 stories to the sidewalk on Court Street. If you see room 1913, do not look directly at the numbers. Do not open the door. This is by far the most important rule. Dr. Scrit. I barely had time to breathe when the janitor closet door swung open. Dr. Scrit stood there, arms folded, eyes unreadable. She looked from the bloodied paper in my hands to my pale, shaking face. "Dr. Uphalis," she said, voice like a blade. "I'm shocked. A long pause, enough to measure the weight of my soul. You took a list that wasn't yours. You were nowhere to be found after your coworker's episode. She almost smiled. You seem willing to do the unthinkable to survive. Good. Her lips twitched in a thin, ghostly smile. Get to work, doctor. Those symptoms won't Google themselves. And she was gone. The lost corridor. I left the closet. List pressed to my chest, heart thundering with relief and dread. But as I stepped into the hallway, everything was wrong. The design was familiar, but the air was heavier. The lights buzzed with a feverish yellow glow. Voices whispered behind closed doors, but the corridor itself was empty, unsettlingly empty. I walked, counting each step, 37, 44, 50. Then I looked up at the sign above the nearest door. St. Francis Hospital. Children's Burn Unit. My breath caught in my throat. There is no children's burn unit at St. Francis Hospital. Epilogue. Whispered warning. The world stilled. A hush fell, deeper than silence. I thought of the rules of all the things left unsaid. If you ever find yourself in a place where the rules seem strange, where the corridors go on forever, where the lights buzz with secrets, move quietly, trust your instincts. And whatever you do, never open room 1913. The night at St. Francis lingers on, and I am still here, listening, watching, waiting for the dawn. Let's settle in for another tale of dread. Emergency alert. Do not enter your basement. Stay above ground. Part 1. You ever notice how a night can feel different before anything actually happens? How the shadows seem just a little longer, the air a little quieter. Sometimes you get that feeling in your bones that something is about to go wrong, even if the house itself is humming with the same gentle lullabies it always does. It was late, a weekday night in the quiet folds of the Pine Barrens. The hour when most of the world is tucked beneath blankets and dreams. The hour when my family is usually at its most peaceful. The hour when the world, sometimes, chooses to I remember the gentle buzz of my phone cutting through that silence, sharp, insistent. A screen bright enough to paint my face ghost white in the dark. A message, not from a friend, or a work notification, or even those endless spammy group chats. But something different, something that felt like it came from somewhere far above me, or maybe far, far below. Emergency alert. Do not enter underground structures, such as basements. Stay above ground until the all clear. The words just hung there, pulsing, as if they had weight. As if by reading them I'd allowed something else into the house. My husband, Luke, was hunched over his own phone on the couch, eyes wide and strange in the blue glow. Did you just get a... Yeah, I answered, not needing him to finish. I looked at the basement door, not for any reason, really. Just a flicker of instinct. Our daughter, Grace, had fallen asleep an hour ago. All the doors and windows were locked. The world outside was starless and silent. It should have felt safe. But now something was different. What do you think's going on? I asked him as softly as if the walls themselves were listening. He shook his head. I don't know. A gas leak? I offered quietly. Radon? Something underground? We had a radon pump, a modern little hum in the corner of our cellar. Maybe it wasn't enough. The house suddenly felt as if it was breathing with us, quiet, expectant. I padded upstairs, checked on Grace, listened to the gentle rhythm of her breath. She was tangled up in blankets, tiny hands curled against her cheek, the innocent sleep of children. I found myself whispering a little prayer to the dark. Let her stay safe. Let her never know this fear. Downstairs, the TV flickered to life. Luke was glued to the local news, but the screen was nothing but black, with jittery white letters. Emergency alert. Do not enter underground structures. It repeated, a mantra, over and over, as if to drum itself into your bones. The whole house seemed to be waiting. I started to think about leaving. Maybe we should get out of here, I said, a little too fast, as I glanced at the basement door again. It's late, Luke replied, his voice brittle. Grace has school tomorrow. I almost laughed, a thin, nervous laugh, at the normalcy of that objection. School, work, tomorrow. But when you get an alert like that, all the normal parts of life suddenly feel like a dream you were having. And now you've woken up. We'll miss school, I told him. We can go to my mom's, just for the night. He crossed his arms, watching the TV, flipping channels, hoping for something normal to break through. But it was just old news, the same old talking heads, as if nothing at all had changed. But something had. I started searching the web, but there was nothing. No headlines, no chatter, nothing to explain the siren call in my pocket. I texted Lacey, a friend of Grace's mom, living a mile away. No answer. Something cold and old was settling into the pit of my stomach. I busied my hands taping the basement door, taping every crack. If it was gas, I reasoned, or something worse. I taped the door as if I could tape out the darkness itself. Luke just watched me, not stopping me, but not joining in. There's always a moment, in every marriage, where you realize you are the only one who feels the fear as strongly as you do. When I finished, I packed a duffel bag, some clothes, my laptop, Grace's dolls, the old rituals of parenthood and panic, mixing together. A cooler full of leftovers, the most fragile cargo in the world. A sleeping child. We bundled Grace into the car, her sleepy face lit by passing streetlights, her breath gentle, as Luke drove us out into the dark. The neighborhood was silent. No porch lights, no cars moving. Nothing but the silent rise of the pines against a sky thick with stars. Not even the comfort of other families making the same choice. Just us, alone, driving out of the quiet heart of our little world. My phone buzzed again. I expected another friend's message. A family check-in. Some sign that we weren't alone in this. Instead, it was the same voice from before. Colder now, more intimate. A message that felt as though it knew who I was. Emergency alert. Your phone's GPS indicates you are leaving city limits. We do not recommend evacuating. Please return home and stay above ground. I read it aloud. My voice was so soft it barely felt like it belonged to me. Luke's eyes flicked over, wary and hollow. They're tracking us, he whispered. I guess so, I said. But who? We drove on, through empty streets, passing forest that had burned in the summer's wildfires, charred pines standing black and brittle against the road. I pressed my forehead against the glass. The world was so big out here, and we were so very, very small. I tried Leslie again. No, she hadn't gotten any alert. No message. Nothing. What if the alert was only for us? I asked, the fear turning my words thin and sharp. What if the only safe place was our basement? Luke squeezed my hand, wanty, as if he could ground me in the real world. We're okay, he said. We're out. We did the right thing. But as the charred trees flickered past, as the silence pressed in closer, I wondered if we had made a mistake. If maybe, just maybe, The warning wasn't what it seemed. Then, the car jerked, lurching forward, brakes squealing against the dark. Something was in the road. We both stared, breathless, lit by our headlights. A shape, long, thin, spindly, not quite animal, not quite anything. A tangle of bones and darkness, moving with a kind of slow, liquid grace. A thing with legs too long for this world. Toes curling against blackened asphalt. It looked at me. I looked back. And for a moment, the world spun on its axis, the night pressing in, a pressure in my skull that felt old and vast and hungry. Whack. The car rocked. Something struck the door. Hard. Grace whimpered, half awake. Whack. Again, louder this time. The bones, the shadows, pressing against the glass. Luke gunned the engine. We sped past, out of the burnt woods, out of the reach of whatever waited there in the dark. My phone buzzed once more. A final message. Emergency alert. All clear. Please return home immediately. But even as the night swallowed us, I couldn't help but wonder if we'd ever really left. Part 2. The night at Mom's house. Sometimes, fear comes in waves, gentle at first, then crashing over you so hard it leaves you gasping. We reached my mom's house just after midnight, headlights sweeping across her little brick ranch, the yard lined with tall, silent pines. I paused for a moment on the driveway, holding Grace close, her warm cheek pressed against my shoulder, breathing in the familiar mix of coffee, dust, and the faintest tinge of cold air. Inside, my mother waited for us at the kitchen table. The house was exactly as I remembered. Nothing ever changed here. Except tonight. Everything was different. And nothing felt truly safe. I started down the hall toward the guest bedroom, but then hesitated. The house had a lower level, half underground, finished as an office, with an old couch that was just big enough for a little girl to sleep. Maybe, I thought, we could tuck ourselves down there, surrounded by concrete and childhood memories, and pretend that the world above us was still turning the way it should. As I reached for the chain lock to the basement, Mom's voice broke the hush. "Where are you going?" I tried to sound casual, but I could hear the tightness in my voice. "I think we're going to sleep downstairs tonight." She frowned. "It's dusty down there. There might be mice. It's not clean." But I was already moving. Determined, driven by the kind of anxiety you can't reason away. Mom followed, exasperated, reminding me of the time I'd taped up the attic door as a child after we found a bat up there. "You were worried it would flatten itself and bite you in your sleep," she said, shaking her head at me. Her voice half scolding, half affectionate. I remembered that fear. Sometimes, no matter how old you get, your childhood anxieties grow up with you. They just change shape. I didn't answer. I was too busy carrying Grace, who was getting heavier by the minute, her breath warm against my neck. At the bottom of the stairs, as I settled her on the old couch, my phone buzzed again. "Emergency alert. Your phone's GPS indicates you have stopped in redacted NJ. Disobeying an emergency alert is a federal offense. Please return home and stay above ground." I showed the message to Luke, who hovered in the stairwell, his face pale and drawn. Mom craned her neck to see the phone too, and just scoffed. "That's not federal, it's state. And it would be an evacuation order, not whatever this is." She tried to reassure me, to talk it all down as a scam or a glitch, but her words seemed to echo in the empty space, falling flat against the cold air of the basement. Luke tucked Grace in quietly, eyes haunted, moving with a kind of careful purpose that only surfaces when fear has taken root. He left to grab the rest of our things from the car. Mom retreated upstairs, the sound of her footsteps fading as I was left alone with Grace, and the creeping chill of the underground. The old office was in the far corner, my father's picture still on the desk, another ghost haunting this night. He'd been gone for 7 years, but in these quiet hours I felt him more than ever. So much of his life had ended up in boxes and storage, tucked away as if the past could be folded up and font. Sometimes, though, the past refuses to stay boxed away. Across the room, a sliding glass door looked out onto the backyard, the pines pressing close. It made me uneasy. That glass barrier between us and the darkness outside. Were we above ground or below? Safe or exposed? My mind spun with worry, cycling through every possibility. Maybe the alerts were a trap. Maybe the only safe place was underground. Maybe nowhere was safe at all. I stared out into the moonlit yard, imagining what might be lurking just beyond the line of trees. Were they only in the burned areas? Or could they move, slither, find their way anywhere the pines grew tall? I tried to ground myself in facts: wildfires, pine cones opening, the cycle of destruction and renewal. But all I could see, in my mind's eye, were skeletons made of sticks, creeping, stretching, growing taller than the trees. My phone buzzed again, but this time it was a text. Lacey. My friend Richelle. Got the same alert you did. BTU. Super weird. A stone dropped in my chest. Was it spreading? Or was it only the two of us, random, chosen, targeted? I wanted to warn Richelle, to tell her not to trust the alert, not to stay above ground. But what would that sound like? Would she think I was crazy? Can you give me her number? I typed to Lacey, hands shaking. I want to ask her about it. Pretty weird that it targeted both of us. No one else. She agreed, and as I waited, Luke returned with the rest of our bags, computer cords dangling, Grace's favorite stuffies peeking out from under his arm. Someone else got the alert, I whispered. One of Lacey's friends. He looked at me, eyes troubled. Really? I asked for her number. When Lacey sent it, I called immediately. On the third ring, a tired voice picked up. Hi, this is, Kate. Lacey's friend. We got the alert too, but we think it's a trap. There's something off about it. There was a pause, but it came from the government, she said, uncertain. How could it be a trap? I explained, my voice trembling. No one else is getting it. When alerts are sent out, they go to everyone nearby. It doesn't make sense. She hesitated. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird, but we're just about to go to bed, so I'd better go. Wait, please. I think the basement is safe. I think someone's trying to lure people into staying above ground. But she cut me off, gently. Okay, maybe. Look, I gotta go. Sorry. The call ended. I stared at my phone, feeling smaller than ever. She didn't believe me, I said to Luke, my voice thin, my lips trembling. She and her kids, her family. What if? He pulled me close, wrapped his arms around me, and I let myself cry. There was nothing left to do but hold on to each other, to the warmth of Grace sleeping, and hope that we could make it through the night. I don't know how long I slept. The darkness was heavy, dreamless, the kind of sleep that only comes after terror has wrung every drop of energy from your body. Then, a voice. Hey, kiddo. I woke up with a jolt, the word echoing through my mind. For a moment I thought I was still a child. Back in my old house, sunlight on the floor, my father's arms around me, safe and whole. But the ache in my back, the roughness of the carpet, reality crashed back in. I rolled over and checked on Grace. Her eyes were wide open, huge in the pale light. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking behind me, at the sliding glass door. Slowly her little hand raised, trembling, and she pointed over my shoulder. I turned and saw it. Something was pushing itself through the broken glass. Slowly, methodically, like a spider squeezing through a crack. It was almost silent, except for a low, popping click, joints snapping, bones shifting, limbs impossibly long, thin, twisting in the moonlight. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Dark legs slid across the carpet, bending the wrong way. It was squeezing its whole body through the shattered door, glass crunching softly under its weight. My mind screamed at me to move, to grab Grace and run, but my body wouldn't obey. The thing stilled, as if sensing me, as if searching for my eyes in the gloom. I felt it staring at me, not with eyes but with hunger, with a cold, ancient intent that had nothing to do with this world. The world began to spin. I felt myself growing dizzy, my balance gone, as if gravity itself was shifting. I screamed in my mind, "You can't have her. You can't have my child." I tried to tell Grace to hide, to point her toward the storage room. But the words tangled in my throat, the colors in the room bleeding and blurring. A shape moved in the shadows. My father, or something wearing his shape. But his face was wrong. His eye drooped, melting, his mouth grinning wide and crooked, his arms hanging too long. "Hey, kiddo," it said again. The voice was like his, but off, flat, warped like a record played too slow. "I miss you so much." "Stop," I sobbed, shaking, my body useless. "Come with me. We can be a family again." It stretched out a hand, fingers twitching. I never got to meet Grace. Wouldn't it be wonderful for me to finally meet her? My mind was drowning. The room tilted. The world was breaking. My father's melted face staring back. Hot pain flashed in my shoulder. I dropped to my knees, screaming. I tried to cry out, to tell Grace to run. But all that came out was a ragged, wordless moan. I looked up and saw Luke dragging me away from the door. Grace peeked out from the storage room, her face twisted with terror. My hand touched my shoulder, warm blood. It bit me. "I'm dying. I'm dying." My phone rang, the sound cutting through the horror. Richella's number flashed on the screen. "You're right," she said, breathless. No greeting, no hesitation. "What?" I croaked. "About the alert. My husband, he knows some people, with cell towers and tracking stuff. They traced it. It's not coming from the government. It's not coming from the town hall or anything." My heart stopped, the world frozen around me. She took a shuddering breath. "It's coming from the middle of the woods." Part 3. Nightmares Above Ground. When the world breaks, it doesn't always shatter all at once. Sometimes it splinters. Quietly, the cracks widening with every heartbeat, until you barely recognize the shape of your life. The hospital was nearly empty that night. A hollow, echoing maze of pale green walls and humming fluorescent lights, where the world outside seemed impossibly distant. Above ground, under two bright bulbs, I felt like I was drifting through someone else's fever dream. Luke stayed with me for as long as he could, but even he had to step away. I lay back, the hospital sheets scratchy beneath me, the throb in my bitten shoulder fading to a numb, insistent ache. I tried not to sleep. I tried not to let my mind wander into darkness. But sleep comes for all of us. In the end, I drifted in and out, the world slipping away in ripples of shadow and cold. Then voices, soft, urgent, slipped through the fog. I opened my eyes for just a moment, saw the doctor and a nurse standing over me, their faces drawn and anxious. I let my eyes flutter closed again, feigning sleep, and listened. "It's just like that man," the nurse whispered, voice trembling. "The one admitted last night. John something." A pause. "I know. What do you think this is?" "I don't know, Rita. I really don't. Should we give her diazepam? Preventatively?" The nurse whispered. "The other one." He screamed so much. "The family will ask questions. There's no reason for her to be on diazepam for an animal bite. They'll ask questions when she's dead too." She snapped, the words cold and heavy. "The least we can do is make her comfortable." Shh, my heart stuttered. I fought to keep my breathing slow, to lie still as their eyes burned into me. A moment later, I heard hurried footsteps, and then silence. I opened my eyes again. I'm going to die." The words rang inside my skull like a church bell, tolling out the hours I had left. Time passed in a haze of fluorescent light and distant footsteps, machines humming their cold lullaby. Luke returned, his face pale and hollow-eyed. "How's the pain now?" he asked softly. "Bad." My voice was barely a whisper. I told him what I'd overheard, voice quaking. He tried to comfort me, to offer some hope. But I could see the fear in his eyes, could hear the doubt threading through his every word. Even hope seemed thin and fragile here. Above ground, we sat in silence. Outside, the world pressed in, unseen, hungry, waiting. I needed answers. I called Richila, desperation shaking my voice as I recounted everything. The bite, the hallucinations, the gnawing certainty that I was being hunted from the inside out. She was crying. "I saw my baby," she whispered, voice breaking. "I had a miscarriage. 14 weeks. I saw her in a little basket, and I heard her cry. I knew it wasn't real, but I went toward her. Before Ravi pulled me back, I wanted to reach through the phone and hold her, to promise her safety. But I was lost myself. But it didn't hurt you, bite you. No, I don't think so." We shared the silence, two strangers on opposite sides of a nightmare, clinging to the fragile thread of connection. "So what do we do?" I asked, helpless. "Just run from it forever." "I've been talking to someone," she replied. "Someone who knows about this more than we do. Maybe I should come see you." "What hospital are you at?" She promised to come. I hung up, my hands trembling. When Richila arrived, she brought with her a woman named Jamie. Older, gaunt, eyes sharp and haunted, as if she'd spent her life staring into shadows no one else could see. She didn't waste time. She leaned in, too close, too eager. "Have you ever heard of speculative evolution?" she asked. I shook my head. Numb. She spoke in quick, clipped bursts. About creatures adapting to modern life. About insects and animals evolving in real time to survive the things we've built. About the possibility that some creatures might evolve to mimic our technology, or even manipulate it. Her theory sounded impossible, wild, but I had seen impossible things. I had felt the bite of something that should not exist. "They can hijack radio signals, emergency systems," Jamie explained, her eyes shining. They can hack your brain too, pull memories and fears right out of you. They feed on it. The stickmen, she paused, as if the name itself tasted sour. They only target people with strong imaginations. The more you fear, the more you dream, the more they have to eat. I felt cold all over, as if my bones had turned to ice. Luke's voice broke the silence. Kate said she heard the doctor saying she's going to die. Is that true? Jamie's silence was answer enough. Rachella's eyes filled with tears. Once it bites you, it's linked to you. It will follow you until it's done, Rachella said. It shows you your nightmares, then yourself. And when you start seeing yourself, you only have a day left. The words sank in like stones. A day left. I stood up, dizzy, suffocating, needing to move. I needed air. I needed to escape these walls, these truths, the press of their eyes. I stumbled out into the corridor, following the faded linoleum tiles toward the vending machines. Just a moment of normalcy. One tiny sweet escape. But the world above ground is never truly safe. My name echoed down the hallway. Luke's voice, frantic. I turned to see him hurrying after me. I just need a minute, I said. He stopped, his face ashen. No, it's not that. Your mom just texted me. We have to go, Grace. His voice broke. What happened? I demanded, panic rising in my chest. She fell. She's not conscious. They're taking her to the hospital. A coldness gripped my heart. To the hospital here. They're taking her to the hospital, he repeated, hollow. Something felt wrong. Wrong in my bones. I looked down. A black, wet tendril trailed from Luke's foot, stretching down the hallway like an umbilical cord of darkness. Dizziness swept over me. The world tilted, turned. Kate! Another voice. Luke. Far away, standing behind me, frozen with terror. I looked back. Other Luke was gone, and in his place was me. I stared at my own face. Perfectly reflected, perfectly wrong. Other me cradled a pillow, her eyes meeting mine, then dropping to the floor. I followed her gaze. Grace lay at my feet, eyes closed, peaceful as if asleep. No. This was my nightmare, an intrusive thought, a horror that lived in my mind for years, clawing at the edges of my sanity in the darkest hours. It's not real. It's not real. I turned and ran, reaching for Luke, the real Luke, behind me. We stumbled back into the room, breathless, heart pounding. We have to get underground. It's here, I gasped, choking on terror. Rachella and Jamie looked at me, then down. I followed their gaze. Blood dripped from my arm, red and wet and final, soaking through my shirt, pattering onto the tile. Drip, drip, drip. Jamie peeled back the cloth of my shirt, her voice soft and heavy as a shroud. Necrotic tissue, she whispered. It's begun, and in that moment, I knew the stickmen weren't done with me yet. The nightmare was still unfolding, above ground. Final part. The stillness underneath, it's strange. The things you remember in moments of terror. The exact brightness of the exit sign. The flickering of the fluorescent bulbs. The way the floor felt beneath bare feet. Every step sharp, cold. More real than dreams. I could not die. Not here, not now. Pain blazed through my shoulder. But I ran, clutching hope and terror tight to my chest. I ran for the only thing that made sense. Escape. The underground, anywhere far from the thing that hunted me above ground. Grace was safe, tucked away with my mother, far from the monster's reach. That was all that mattered. The exit sign glowed red, like a beacon at the end of the world. But the hallway never ended. No matter how fast I ran, the sign never got closer. The hospital hallway stretched on forever, swallowing my footsteps, muffling my cries. Somewhere behind me, Luke's voice faded, then disappeared. It was just me and the darkness, running, running. And then, with the flicker of a light, the world changed. I wasn't in the hospital anymore. Instead, the Pine Barrens, endless pines, rising to the night sky. The ground beneath me raw and broken, sharp with sticks and stones. The air thick with the scent of fire and decay. I was alone, heart racing, breath frosting in the cold. Somewhere in the darkness, something watched. Panic is a thing that eats you from the inside out. I stumbled forward, feet aching, blood dripping from my shoulder. My only guide was the moon, faint and distant above the skeletal trees. How far had I come? How long had I been running? The woods pressed in, silent except for the low fluttering sound behind me. Soft like bone against bark or the rattle of wind through hollow limbs. No, no, no. Not here. Not now. I tried to think, tried to remember survival stories, anything that might save me. But the Barrens are old, older than hope, older than fear. The Pine Barrens swallow those who try to outthink them. A clearing. Ash and bone. Pale under moonlight. Blackened trees stood like gravestones, their branches reaching for something they'd never touch. It was beautiful, and it was death. Then, a snap, a figure at the edge of the trees. Moonlight glimmered off pale skin and dark hair. My own face hanging limp and wrong, lips stretched in a crooked smile. I ran, panic spiraling, but the world tilted and I fell hard. Pain shot up my arm through my shoulder, everything spinning. She was standing over me now. Me but not, a puppet with black tendrils, lips peeling back to reveal rows of sharp, shining teeth. She leaned in, breath cold and rotting, her face swallowing the world. "They eat brains," Jamie had whispered. I tried to fight, to push her away, but I was pinned weak, broken, caught in a nightmare that would never end. But as the darkness pressed in, I remembered. The stickmen are drawn to brain signals, to thought, to fear, to imagination. What if I gave them nothing? I closed my eyes. No more fear, no more love, no more hope or horror, or desperate plans for grace. I wiped it all away, like erasing chalk from a board. Just emptiness, silence. For the first time in all my anxious, wild, desperate life, I let myself think nothing at all. The world shifted. The creature hesitated, tendrils twitching as if it could no longer see me. I lay there, silent and still, empty as the moon above. The nightmare paused. It searched, confused, clicking in the darkness. I stayed that way, empty, thoughtless, weightless, for what felt like forever. And then, with the first soft blush of dawn, the thing was gone. I woke in the gray light, sticky with blood and vomit and cold sweat, the forest eerily quiet around me. I rose slowly, my body battered but alive. I found my way back to the world of the living, following broken paths through the barrens until the hospital lights flickered in the distance. They found me at the edge of the road, lost and half delirious. Luke and the hospital staff had searched for me all night. When I saw Grace, safe and warm, I wept. For now, we stay underground. The stickmen still haunt my dreams, and sometimes, just sometimes, I see shadows twisting at the edge of the basement door. But here in the dark beneath the world, Grace and I are safe. For now, Richella, Jamie, and I are searching for a way to end them for good. Some say drowning works. Others claim there's no way to truly kill a shadow, only to survive it. But I have hope, because I am still here, and Grace is still here, and the world keeps spinning, even in the face of nightmares. And as the darkness presses close, I remember that sometimes the safest place in the world is the place no one else dares to go. Underground, in the hush of midnight, with only your heartbeat and your hope to guide you. And now, another experience from the edge of sleep. We've been stuck in construction traffic for 8 hours now. If we leave our vehicles, we will die. Part 1. The line of no escape. It started as an ordinary road trip, one of those bright, endless highways where the sky stretches so wide it seems to swallow up all your worries. We'd left Gainesville early, Lauren and I, with the cats squawking in their crates and our dreams piled up in the back seats. We were chasing the promise of Maine, pine forests and fresh starts, the kind of life you imagine when you're tired enough to believe in it. That was yesterday. Now, the world is just headlights and shadow, an ocean of metal and exhaust, all of us stranded in a line that stretches forever. 8 hours stuck on I-95, somewhere outside Lewiston. My pickup idles beneath a sickly gray sky. Lauren's Honda is behind me, a fragile bubble of safety I can only see in the mirrors. I haven't seen her face in hours. If I step outside to try, I'll die. The last man who tried was shot in the legs, then crushed beneath the tracks of a tank. It all began with a message, a simple, sinking sense of delay, the kind you get used to on long drives. The radio turned to static, spitting out broken words and numbers that made less and less sense. My phone flickered, glitched, loaded only fragments of the world beyond. The familiar digital dinosaur leaping cacti in a game for the stranded and disconnected. It was quiet, at first. Just the hum of engines, the soft hissing of the cats behind Lauren, and the soft click of her voice on the speakerphone. "I'm so tired," Lauren had whispered. I could hear the cats crying, their panic a ghost in the wires. "I know. Let's get food when we're through," I'd promised. But the line never moved. Time softened, then hardened. The air thickened with the ache of not knowing. Restless, drivers started peering out, half-shouts drifting up and down the shoulder. Little knots of confusion, anger, fear. I stepped out to stretch my legs, thinking I might wave at Lauren, reassure her. I didn't make it far. A bullhorn crackled. The words punched through the air. "Return immediately to your vehicles. No one is permitted to be outside. This is your only warning. If you do not heed it, there will be severe consequences." A man ahead of me cursed, refusing to listen. An instant later, he crumpled. I didn't see the shot, only the silence that followed. That was enough. I hurried back, pulse drumming. Lauren's call came through, jagged with static and panic. "I don't know what's happening," I told her. "Maybe it's a lockdown, some kind of search, or I don't know." The call cut out, and the world got smaller. Minutes slipped by. An ambulance pushed its way up the shoulder, its siren slicing the silence. Inside, I glimpsed figures in riot gear, weapons glinting under the lights. They dragged the fallen man away, slammed the doors, vanished. A car in front, a red Hyundai, tried to follow, desperate for escape. It barely got moving before it vanished in a thunderclap of fire and metal. A tire rolled past, still smoldering. I glanced back. Lauren's hands circled out the window, frantic. "Can you hear me?" she called. I shouted back, voice raw. I'm here." She needed a bottle. Anything, any fragment of normalcy. I fumbled through it, our only act of courage. 2 cars apart, then the real terror began. Massive trucks crawled in on the southbound side, cranes and steel and something cold and final. They began building slabs of metal, stacking, locking together. A wall, rising piece by piece. No way out. Lauren's voice came, thin and scared. They're walling us in. What do we do? I tried calling 911. One last hope. The line between order and chaos. A woman's voice answered, chillingly calm. Sir, I am going to need you to remain calm and stay in your vehicle. And if you would, roll down your window, not the driver's side, the passenger's side. A knock at my window. A police officer, holding a phone, smiling too wide. She told me everything was fine, warned me not to make false calls, but nothing was fine. She left, and I could feel the pressure of unseen eyes, the slow suffocation of certainty. I shouted back to Lauren, I think we're trapped. The cop who answered my call was standing right outside my truck. She said everything's fine. It's not. Something's wrong here. She cursed. We both fell silent, waiting. That's when another man jumped from his car, made for the trees. Gunfire cracked, sharp and merciless. A tank rolled from the woods, flattening him, erasing him as if he'd never existed. I watched, heart frozen. They're closing the roof now. I can see the cranes, see the last sliver of sky vanishing behind steel. There's no signal left. Soon, there will be no world beyond these walls. Soon, there will be nothing but the hum of idling engines and the silent, desperate prayers of those still inside. Armed men in riot gear are moving from car to car, pulling people out. Sometimes they come back. Sometimes I never see them again. They're almost to my truck now. If anyone reads this, know that we were here, that we loved and hoped and waited for rescue. If you can, please try to help us. Part 2. The other side. I don't remember letting go of the steering wheel. I remember only the way my knuckles glowed pale in the gray dawn. The cold sweat on my neck as the world outside my truck's window shifted and grew stranger. A figure in riot gear approached, helmeted, faceless, holding a gun as big as an entire future. He rapped at the glass, his voice distant and muffled. Driver's license, he said, as if any of this was normal. Don't try anything, or I will shoot you in the head. I handed it over, my hand trembling. He studied it, then spoke into a radio, his words sharp and deliberate. I have located the gardener. Confirm that assistance is en route. The gardener. My name, yet not my name. A robotic voice replied. Assistance is en route. Cold comfort. I asked him what this was. Why we were here. Why the world outside felt wrong in ways I couldn't even name. We're saving the world, he said, handing back my license with gloved fingers. You'll understand soon enough. Please do not worry. But of course I did. Within moments, more of them gathered. I was told to step out of my truck, to come peacefully. Lauren's car was just behind me, her face pale and wide-eyed framed in the window, the cats howling like the wind. I'm not leaving her, I said, or the Thats. More radio static, more strange code words. The gardener and the gatherer are to be brought together, our titles, not our names, as if our lives had become pieces on a chessboard, moved by hands we'd never see. They let me join Lauren, her grip on me, a lifeline. Our cats, Hanky and Hattie, shrieked as the riot-geared guards tried to handle their carriers. I almost laughed for a moment. Because the cats, at least, still knew how to be afraid. We marched in a tight procession, guided by guns and silence, past a landscape that had lost all color except for fear. We entered the woods, where the metal walls met, and formed a kind of corral, and joined a crowd huddled together, shivering, in the shadow of something monstrous and unseen. It smelled of sweat, panic, and something older. The hush of voices, pleading, praying, remembering. A woman made a run for it, sprinting for freedom, and the guards did nothing. We tried to save her. One of them said softly, "But not everyone can be saved." And then, in the next instant, the sky seemed to fall. There was a rumble, a low, bone-shaking thunder. I looked up just in time to see the last square of sky above us, swallowed by a falling sheet of metal, slamming down as a roof. A wave of silence followed, impossibly heavy. The world beyond that square. Hundreds of cars, people, trees flattened, erased. Lauren clung to me. The cats howled. Lightning lashed the new open ceiling above us, painting everything with green and blue flashes. It felt like the world was being rebuilt in front of us, without rules, without reason. "We're in hell," I whispered. A bolt of lightning struck just feet away, a blast of white-hot light that left the air buzzing, the ground glowing a strange radioactive green. The spot shimmered, and then the floor itself collapsed inward, devoured by a hole so black it seemed to suck the memory of color from the world. "Everybody now, please step into the portal," the leader commanded. No one moved. We stared at the impossible, the glowing green ring, the endless dark at its heart. The guards threatened calmly, kindly, "Step in, or be shot." I squeezed Lauren's hand. "I'll go first," I said, my voice shaking but certain. She nodded, eyes shimmering with tears. "I love you," she said, and I tried to memorize her face in the lightning-flashed darkness. I turned and backed into the hole as the guard had demonstrated. The world folded around me, silent and weightless. I thought of Lauren. I thought of our life before all this. Then the darkness closed over my head, and I was gone. It was a short drop. My feet hit the ground with a shock, as if I'd fallen from a dream. But the place I landed was no dream at all. The sky above was still dark, streaked with perpetual storms. The ground beneath my feet was black rock, occasionally shot through with flashes of deep red, some strange plant alive and glowing. There were more guards, waiting. "Welcome, gardener," one of them said. Their voice muffled but oddly gentle. "We've been waiting for you." Lauren followed, dropping from the portal, her hair wild around her face. I caught her, held her close. Off in the distance, a mountain rose, solitary, looming, impossibly tall. From its slopes came a distant shriek, something inhuman, mournful. The group gathered, fewer now, always fewer. The cats seemed strangely calm, as if this world was a second home. I watched them pad across the black rocks, their tails flicking, sometimes joined by other cats who melted from the shadows and vanished again. We were told to march to the mountain. The first monster found us before we'd walked a mile. Someone shouted, and I looked down to see what looked at first like a snake, until it rose up on bony arms, claws flashing. Its head was wrong, a blur of heat and air, impossible to see clearly. It struck, silent and deadly, and a woman was gone, just gone, snatched into the earth. The guards fired, but the thing slipped away, dissolving into the rocks as if the world itself was swallowing it up. "You have to hit them in the heart," said our guide. "The good news is, they have 3 days blurred together. 43 of us became 20. The mountain was always ahead, always out of reach. There was no sun, no moon, only lightning. We drank bitter liquid, never grew hungry or tired. The only comfort sometimes was a warm cat on my lap. A strange blessing in a world that made no sense. My phone, almost dead before, remained at full charge. Sometimes, when a cat pressed its nose to the screen, the signal would flicker, and I could hear the voices of home, see the words of those who still remembered us. But mostly, there was only the darkness, the storm, the endless climb. Lauren walks beside me. Our cats, silent and brave, pad at our feet. I hold on to the memory of her hand in mine and pray for morning, even if morning never comes. They call me the gardener, and her the gatherer. We're climbing toward the mountain, toward the professor, toward answers or whatever waits for us at the end of this black road. If you're reading this, know that I haven't given up. Not yet. Final part. The black mountain rose before us, a jagged crown beneath a sky of endless storms. At its summit, the world narrowed into something ancient and ominous, a hut made of bones, shining slick and dark beneath the flickering lightning. As we drew close, our cats, silent since the first day, arched their backs and hissed at the bone-thin air. One of the guards, his visor reflecting only my own ghostly face, spoke with the tired authority of someone who'd done this too many times before. "You are to meet with the professor, 4 at a time." He lifted his weapon, pointing, not threatening, just directing. 4 people, selected at random, shuffled forward, shoulders bowed. The rest of us sat, numbed by exhaustion, by hunger, by too many impossible things. Hanky and Hattie paced in their carriers, fur standing straight up. The wind in the pines below made a sound like distant screaming. We waited for what felt like a lifetime. Every so often, a bolt of lightning illuminated the hut, and the red curtain fluttered in the wind, as if daring us to look inside. When the first group finally returned, they smiled. Smiles that looked carved wide and glassy. I felt cold. No one would say what happened within, only repeating, "Everything's fine." "You'll see." Another group entered. One less returned. It was our turn. I squeezed Lauren's hand. "Ready?" She shook her head but stepped forward. The curtain parted, and we went in. The world inside the bone hut was a different universe. Hot and close, and suffocating with a sense of ancient dread. In the corner, one of the snake-bone things crouched over a corpse, tearing and feeding, the sound wet and rhythmic. Blood splattered the bones, pooling on the black floor. On a table sat a machine, humming and whirring, sprouting wires like some monstrous spider. 4 chairs faced the machine. 3 already occupied, their inhabitants unmoving, vacant-eyed, thin wires snaking from the machine into their heads. A cat, unbothered by the carnage, or perhaps too sedated to care, slept in a carrier on the floor, a wire attached to its skull. And in the farthest corner, cross-legged and still, sat the professor. His hair was shock white, his glasses thick and owl-like. The wires vanished into his scalp. His eyes opened, blue and wild, pinning us like specimens. "Hey there, Chief," he said. "Been waiting for you." The professor spoke in a calm, measured tone, almost grandfatherly, but edged with mania. He told us of a portal between worlds, found by accident, a wormhole between the young Earth and this old, dying place. Earth, he said, was never meant to last. This place had been here since before stars, before memory. and it will be here forever, as long as we keep feeding it. He spoke of energies, souls and hearts, and the power of human virtue. This world is hungry for good. The purer the heart, the more it can sustain. The red plants, he said, fed on hearts, human hearts. The better the heart, the more this world would bloom. He gestured at the machine and at the wires. One last thing before you truly understand, he said. See for yourselves. He offered us each a wire, tipped with a slender needle. None of us wanted to, but the creature in the corner raised its head, hissing, a reminder. We obeyed. I pressed the wire into my scalp, a chill running through me, and in an instant, I was flying. The world below was impossibly green, lush and shimmering. Waterfalls spilled into fields of wildflowers. Children laughed. There was only joy. Lauren held my hand, radiant in the golden sunlight. Everything was right. No hunger, no fear, no death. We rose higher, over a world made perfect. I never wanted to leave. And then I was back. The wire jerked from my head. The world was gray and cold again. Pretty good, isn't it? The professor said, grinning. That's what we're building. That's what your work is for. He called me the gardener, said my hands would bring the red plants, the heart plants, to life. Lauren, the gatherer, would lure pure hearts here, through promises and persuasion. Another, the judge, would choose who deserved this fate, and the rest? Lauren whispered, voice trembling. The professor shrugged, almost bored. Soldiers, plants, workers, some just fuel. Sacrifices for the greater good. You saw the paradise, didn't you? We can have it all, if you help. Outside, the thunder rolled. The cats howled. Somewhere, more gunfire echoed. More hearts for the garden. When it was over, we stumbled out into the open air. Down the far side of the mountain, the world was transformed. An oasis encircled by heart plants. Trees heavy with fruit. Grass soft and warm underfoot. Sunlight pouring down through a gap in the clouds. As we crossed the boundary into the green, I felt a sudden, artificial warmth. A taste of the joy from the vision. The dread faded. For just a moment, we found a hut, finally alone together. The cats curling at our feet. I leaned into Lauren for comfort, for hope, but she stiffened. This is wrong, she said quietly. I can feel it, even here, where it's beautiful. It's all built on something horrible. Her voice broke. All those people, all those hearts, and the professor, I don't trust him. Did you see the way the cats reacted? I wanted to argue, to say paradise justified the cost, but I remembered the way the oasis warmth had smothered the voice inside me, the part that knew right from wrong. I remembered the way the cats hissed, their fur standing on end, the way the guards looked through us, not at us. Lauren's eyes met mine, fierce and frightened. We can't do this, she whispered. We can't help him. But what choice do we have? I said, voice barely above a breath. If we refuse, she shook her head. Then we fight. We find a way to stop him, to kill him, if we have to. Our cats pressed closer, purring, as if they understood. I stared out at the lush fields, the sparkling ponds, the impossible blue of the sky, knowing it was all a lie, a garden grown from pain. Tomorrow, Lauren would return to our world. The professor would watch, waiting for us to play our parts. But tonight, in the silence of the green, I clung to hope like a prayer, whispering promises to myself. I wasn't sure I could keep. If you're out there, if you can hear this, please, don't let paradise grow from blood. Don't let the garden bloom from hearts. There's still time to stop this. There must be. Let's turn the page to another whispered horror. I've been a search and rescue diver for 12 years, but last week I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. There's a certain silence that lives beneath the water. Cold, heavy, and so much older than we are. I've been a search and rescue diver for most of my adult life. A witness to tragedy in rivers and lakes where secrets rest beneath the ripples. But nothing I've seen in 12 years of pulling bodies from the dark prepared me for what waited beneath bad water. Some things you find in the deep should be left there. In my little northern town, water search and rescue isn't glamorous work. We're not lifeguards. We're the ones called when someone's already vanished beneath the surface, when hope is already gone, and all that's left is the slow, methodical search for a body. Out here, the rivers are cold, their currents vicious. Most of the time, it's more about recovery than rescue. The water changes the dead. It bloats them, warps them, strips away all the warmth and humanity, leaving something almost unrecognizable. I've seen a lot of things in these waters. Grief, despair, the quiet resignation of families waiting for closure. I've seen enough to know the river isn't kind. Still, I kept at it. Someone has to. Most new divers don't last past their first recovery. But last week, something happened that made me question everything I thought I knew about my job and about the world beneath the surface. It was just after 11 when I got the call. A father and his 10-year-old son out fly fishing. The father caught his finger on a hook, went back to the truck for the first aid kit, and when he returned, his boy was gone. It had been raining for weeks, the river swollen and treacherous, cold as the grave. The father's face told me everything I needed to know before we even got started. I didn't expect to find the boy alive. We searched the forest first, just in case he'd wandered off. But the woods turned up nothing. Eventually, all that was left was the river. A rushing, hungry thing too cold and fast for a child to survive long. I slipped into the water, the chill biting through my wetsuit, the weight of dread already settling in my gut. We searched for hours, combing the shallows, diving into eddies and snags, always hoping maybe, just maybe, the body would surface. But there was nothing. The boy was gone. As night settled, I found myself staring at a creek bed that had been dry for years. The heavy rains had turned it into a new channel, a torrent of water racing across a bend in the river straight toward a place we all knew to avoid. Bad water. Bad water even among search and rescue. There are places you just don't go. Bad water was one of them. 100-yard stretch near the thickest part of the woods, where old divers said the river pulled things down and never gave them back. Don't go near bad water, they'd say, and we listened. But as I followed the creek, dread growing heavy in my chest, I realized the water led right into the heart of that forbidden stretch. I hesitated, staring at the surface. A slick, glassy black. It didn't look dangerous, but looks can lie. The others would have told me to walk away, to let it go. But something pulled at me. The thought of that boy, lost and alone, pulled under and left to rot. I couldn't turn away. I checked my gear, took a breath, and slipped under the surface. Below, the first thing I noticed was the stillness. The current, always strong elsewhere, faded away. The water was deep, impossibly dark, my light cutting only a faint cone through the murk. I kicked lower, expecting to find snags, weeds, maybe a lost branch or two. Instead, shapes began to materialize in the gloom. Not branches, not weeds, arms, dozens, No hundreds of arms, green and bloated, rising from the riverbed, each one rooted to the ground, as if planted, fingers flexing slowly, reaching for something that wasn't there. Some were small, babies' hands, their fists opening and closing hungrily. Others were thick, adult, ancient. They swayed in the cold current, like plants that had learned to hunger. I froze, horror washing through me. I tried to blink the vision away, but it was real. And caught among them, I saw him, the missing boy, pale and still. Those ghastly hands were pulling him down, dragging him into the silt, burying him chest deep while others twined around his arms and legs. His empty eyes stared up through the water as if begging for help, or maybe already beyond it. He wasn't alone. Other bodies were half buried nearby. Some new, some nothing but blotted white masses, devoured by the hands. They were feeding. The hands were feeding. After I don't remember how I got back to the surface. I just remember my mask filling with bitter bile as I wrenched it off, vomiting again and again on the muddy shore. I stumbled to camp, found Moose, one of the old-timers, a diver who'd been around longer than anyone. I told him what I'd seen. His face hardened. "I told you never to go near Badwater," he said quietly, voice cold as the river itself. He gripped my shoulder firm, almost pleading, "Don't tell anyone else. There's a reason those things only grow there. We have an agreement. Don't mess this up." I stared at him, lost. How many people have died because of those things? I hissed, "Shut up." His eyes darted around, scanning the camp. Sometimes you have to choose between lesser and greater evils. That's all I'll say. Don't tell anyone. Maybe one day you'll understand. And then he was gone, leaving me alone with the memory of those reaching hands and the boy being buried alive in the silt. End of part 1. Now, even in sleep, I see them, green arms, fingers flexing, waiting to feed. I used to believe the river only held the dead. Now I wonder what else it wants. I've been a search and rescue diver for 12 years. But now I can't sleep anymore. Part 2. The nightmares begin. I thought for a while that if I just kept my head down and tried to forget, maybe I could live with what I'd seen. But that's not how things work. Not with this. Not with Badwater. Every time I closed my eyes, the river followed me. I'd dream I was back in my bed, the weight of sleep heavy and cold. But then arms green, slick and hungry would rise from the dark, pressing me down, fingers wrapping around my mouth and throat. I'd try to scream, but all I could taste was river silt and something rotten. I'd wake, heart pounding, sweat cold, with the sour stink of old grass and dead fish still lingering. I stopped sleeping. Even in the daytime I saw those reaching arms just at the edge of my vision, flickering through every ripple, every shadow in the water. But real horror was still waiting for me. Another body. A few days after my last dive, the phone rang again. There was a body by the river, they said, not far from where the boy had vanished. My hands shook as I drove out, a cold dread pressing into my chest. At the riverbank, I found Moose and the other senior divers, Clyde and Ryan, huddled over something. Their voices were tight, words carried on the breeze. "Shit, shit, shit! Do you think it was him? Let's not jump to conclusions. I heard voices by the river last night. The lures, he's not supposed to use those anymore. Well, he is. For whatever reason, I stood there, unnoticed, as fear flickered in their eyes. Then a twig snapped beneath my boot, and 3 faces swung toward me, Moose's gaze colder than the river in January. Clyde tried to play it off, stepping aside so I could see. The body was Michael, a new diver. I just taught his last class. He lay in full gear, staring blindly at the sky. My throat tightened with grief and confusion. Moose spoke up, voice flat. Looks like he went in alone. Strong current, maybe. Knocked off his mask and regulator. Drowned. I knelt beside Michael, my hands shaking. Why was he in the water? The old divers exchanged glances. We think he was looking for the missing boy, Clyde lied, but I knew better.
Michael would never break protocol, especially not alone, especially not here.
And he'd been out of town the day the boy vanished. None of it made sense. Signs and secrets. The others wandered off as the ambulance arrived, leaving me alone with Michael. I looked for signs. A cut, a bruise, anything to prove their story. There were no injuries on his face. No sign he'd been dashed against rocks. But when I pulled the collar of his suit down, my heart froze. A ring of deep, splotchy bruises encircled his neck like he'd been strangled. My mind flashed back to the riverbed, to those grasping hands and hungry fingers. Had they dragged Michael down too? And if so, why did they let him go? Was he a warning for me? As I stood over his body, a deep, cold certainty settled in my chest. There was something ancient and twisted at work here. Something Moose and the old divers knew about. Something they'd made their own silent peace with. Lures in the dark that night. After another hollow sleep, I sat by the window, piecing together what I'd overheard. Ryan's talk of voices, Clyde's mention of lures, a nameless hymn breaking some agreement. I couldn't rest. Anger and curiosity won over fear. And I found myself driving out to the river in the black hours before dawn. For half an hour, there was nothing. Only the quiet pulse of nocturnal life, water rushing, wind through the trees. But then, faint and distant, a voice began to call. Help, please, I can't swim. Something in me lurched. It sounded like a child, a boy. Instinct overrode sense, and I crashed through the brush, flashlight bouncing wildly. Help, please, I can't swim. It repeated, again and again. The exact same words, the exact same pitch, too flat, too hollow. Not a real plea, but a recording, a lure. When I reached the bank, my light caught on something grotesque. A face pressed up out of the mud, algae green, the roots of it stretching into the earth. Its mouth worked, calling for help, the rest of the face still and blank. An imitation of life, nothing more. In the shallows beside it, I saw two green hands, reaching up from the silt, waiting. My stomach churned with horror as I realized what must have happened to Michael. He'd heard that call and answered it, only to be dragged under by those things, those hands and faces that hunted for the living. I watched as the cries faded, the voice growing softer, until the face slid back into the mud, disappearing without a trace. I stared at the water, wondering how many more waited, silent and hungry, just beneath the surface. Aftermath. I ran. No, fled, back to my car. The taste of terror sharp and metallic in my mouth. All night I sat awake, thinking about what I'd seen, replaying every nightmare, every secret the river tried to whisper. I thought about leaving, bags packed by the door, heart thumping with the urge to escape. But I kept thinking about Michael, and the boy, and all the others lost to the river and its secrets. And I remembered why I became a search and rescue diver in the first place. Not to turn away from the darkness, but to face it, no matter how deep it goes. End of part 2. If you're reading this, maybe you'll understand. Sometimes the things that wait beneath the surface are older and hungrier than we can ever imagine. And sometimes, doing the right thing means staring back into the dark, even if it swallows you whole. I've been a search and rescue diver for 12 years, but now I can't ignore the river. Part 3. Staying for the dead. I wish I could say I left, that I packed my bags and ran from this place and from the river that has haunted my dreams. But the truth is, Michael's funeral changed everything. He was only 22. His girlfriend sobbed through the entire service. His friends' shoulders hunched, faces pale, carried the casket as if it weighed 1,000 pounds. Guilt sat heavy in my chest as I watched them lay him to rest. None of this should have happened. That night, the nightmares grew worse. Nightmares. Old myths. Sleep came in fits and starts. When it found me, I was back in my bed, until the arms rose from beneath the sheets, cold and slick, pinning me down, covering my mouth. That same sickly, fishy scent burned in my nose and made my eyes water. 2 more hands forced my eyes open. I was helpless. From the ceiling, a face pushed through. Green. Mossy. Unmistakably Michael. Tears spilled down my face. "Why did you do this?" His voice was a wet, broken whisper, black fluid spilling from his mouth. I tried to answer, but the hands held me silent. "Why? Why? Why?" He kept repeating, the word growing sharper, more inhuman, until I woke with a gasp, sweat slick on my mind, convinced that foul smell still lingered in the air. The nightmares were no longer just dreams. They were warnings, reminders, maybe even punishments. I started to wonder if all of this was my fault. If I'd never ignored the warnings about bad water, never dove where I shouldn't, I might have left the darkness undisturbed. But I couldn't stop thinking. I couldn't stop digging. Stories older than the river growing up here. Everyone knew stories about bad water. Tales of hands that reached from the depths, of voices luring the unwary to a watery grave. As a kid, I thought they were just ghost stories meant to keep us away from the rapids. But old legends stick around for a reason. I began combing through the archives at the local library, finding traces of the same warnings in folklore and native myths. One old legend, translated from a tribal dialect, stuck with me. A man, blessed with everything, family, home, harvest, lost it all to sickness. Alone and desperate, he wandered the riverbank, until one day he heard the voices of his lost wife and child calling to him from the water. They promised happiness if only he'd join them. Without hesitation, he dove in and drowned, cold and alone. Scholars had always claimed it was a fable, a warning against clinging to grief. But I no longer believed that. Digging deeper, I found variations on the tale. Stories of a river god, a spirit named King Moss. Sometimes he was the river itself, other times a monster lurking within it. The stories always ended the same way. A pact with the people. Some said they sacrificed the lost to appease him. Others claimed the pact was simple: leave the river alone and it would leave you unharmed. A cold certainty formed in my mind. Moose and the other old divers weren't just talking about safety rules. They were talking about the old agreement, the one made to keep King Moss and his hands from hungering for more. Patterns and disappearances. I started plotting every drowning and disappearance from the past several decades. Most were where you'd expect. Dangerous currents, busy beaches. But the ones without bodies, the ones where people vanished completely, almost all of those clustered around Badwater. Even when the current was blamed, it didn't add up. Not when you knew about the hands, the lures. Not when you'd seen it yourself. But while mapping all of this out, I noticed something even stranger. One patch of woods west of Badwater never matched up between maps. On some, it was dense forest. On others, a small nameless lake. A few ancient charts marked a cave system. On Google Earth, the image warped and pixelated as soon as I tried to zoom in. No clear views. Nothing but blurred green and digital smudge. How had I never explored there? How had no one mentioned it before? Deeper than the river. The longer I stared at those maps, the more certain I became. There's something hidden out there. Something even Moose and the others might not understand. Maybe it's the heart of the legend, the true source of King Moss, or whatever watches from the depths. Maybe it's just another nightmare, waiting to be found. Either way, I can't walk away. Not yet. Tomorrow I'll head into the forest west of Badwater. I need to know how deep this darkness goes. If you don't hear from me again, well, wish me luck. End of part 3. I've been a search and rescue diver for 12 years. But what I saw last week has me questioning both my job and reality. Part 4, Into the Woods. Sometimes I wonder if curiosity is just another way to drift closer to danger. After uncovering that mysterious patch on the map, a place that seemed to shift between lake, forest, and caves depending on who was drawing it, I decided I had to see it for myself. Maybe I hoped I'd find something I could finally explain. Maybe I just wanted to know the truth. No matter how dark, I packed what I could. Hiking gear, a flashlight, a camera, even a small handgun for peace of mind. I told myself I was prepared, but looking back, I think part of me knew you can never really be ready for things that move beneath the surface of our world. I left just after noon. The sun was bright overhead, but a lingering chill clung to the woods, the kind that's never quite banished, even in summer. Rain had soaked the ground for weeks, and each step left me caked in mud, slipping and stumbling as I cut deeper into the trees. The walk took much longer than I expected. My phone, which I was using as a guide, kept steering me wrong. I would aim straight for the place, then check my location, only to find myself veering off, as if the forest itself wanted me to stay lost. For hours I kept getting closer, then farther away, until finally I reached a clearing. The stone throne. It was like nothing I'd ever seen. A massive stone spire, jagged and ancient, rising out of the field as if someone had dropped a mountain in the center of the woods. A wide fissure split the front, forming the mouth of a cave. From it, a clear, fast river flowed, winding away into the trees. I stepped into the cave, following the river's path. Instantly, the air dropped 10 degrees, and the walls pressed in around me. It was dark and silent, but the deeper I went, the more I noticed a faint blue-green glow up ahead. When I reached the heart of the cave, I found myself in a vast, domed chamber. The walls were covered with thousands of tiny glowing worms, lighting everything in a ghostly haze. At the center of it all was a throne, hewn straight from the stone, wrapped in beads and shining metal. And sitting atop it, a figure made of green moss, crowned with stone, with 2 dark stones where the eyes should be. It was enormous, tall as 2 men, unmoving, its hands resting gently on the arms of the throne. I knew, deep down, that this was the being the legends called King Moss. Then the smell hit me. A thick, rotting scent like wet grass and river muck, so strong I almost doubled over. It coated my throat, settled into my lungs. I tried to focus, forcing myself to breathe through my mouth, but the taste of it was just as bad. I lifted my camera, wanting to capture proof, but every image was nothing but a blur of green and black. No matter what I tried, the figure wouldn't come into focus, as if it refused to be recorded. That's when I heard a voice behind me. The pact. It won't work. I spun around, heart racing. Moose stood in the darkness, tired and old, watching me with sad eyes. He raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "You made it farther than most," he said. "He hides himself from cameras. It's a miracle you even found this place." I kept my hand near my side, steady on my gun, but nodded for him to continue. Moose looked defeated, more exhausted than I'd ever seen. He explained the truth, his words echoing softly in the cave. King Moss, older than any human story, maybe older than the land itself, had made a pact long ago. He would limit his hunger, restricting his power to certain parts of the river, and only take those who fell in. In return, the people of the land would leave him undisturbed and keep his existence secret. Only a handful of protectors would ever know about him, Moose told me, passing the secret from one generation to the next. Moose himself had stumbled onto the cave by accident years ago, and King Moss had chosen to keep him alive as a new protector. But something had changed. My dive at Badwater, the place everyone said to avoid, had broken the old rules. Moose had kept my secret, but the river had not. Moose's voice broke a little as he confessed. "Once you saw what was under the water and lived to tell about it, King Moss began to stir. He started using the lures again. Those faces, those voices you heard. It was a warning, and others have paid the price." I understood then. Michael's death was no accident. It was meant as a message, to Moose, to me, to anyone who might threaten the pact. The Mark I begged Moose for help. "We have to stop him, or at least get away. There has to be something we can do." Moose only shook his head. I'm not allowed to go against him." Then, quietly, he lifted his shirt. There, pulsing in the center of his chest, was a mass of green webbed with veins that faded into his skin. It throbbed like a second heart. "It's how he keeps me in line," Moose said softly. "If I try to leave or break the pact, it hurts. If I really tried to betray him, it would kill me." The realization chilled me to my core. He wasn't just a legend. He was a living thing, a force old and hungry, able to mark and bind his protectors. No escape. I backed away, shaken, gun trembling in my hand. Moose only looked tired. "Go on, if you must, but you won't be able to escape. Not from this." My mind reeled. The world outside the cave suddenly seemed impossibly far away. But I ran. I ran until the cold air burned in my lungs, until I stumbled out of the woods and found my car waiting. I drove home without looking back. Final words: this might be the last you hear from me. I've packed what I can. I'm leaving tonight, before the river or the forest can change my mind. Maybe King Moss has ways of stopping me. Maybe he already knows what I'm planning. All I can do is try. If I make it out, maybe I'll find a place where the rivers run clear, where there are no old packs or hands in the water, and no moss watching from beneath the surface. Wish me luck. Good night. I've been a search and rescue diver for 12 years, but what I saw last week has me questioning both my job and reality. Part 5, Final Entry. The final escape. This is the last time I'll write to you. I'm sorry. After my last message, I couldn't stay a second longer. I packed my bags with shaking hands, barely caring where I was going. Just that I needed to leave this town, this river, and that ancient thing beneath the earth. I told myself I could sleep in my car, drift from place to place, find a quiet job somewhere far away. All I wanted was distance from the cave and the cold, mossy eyes I felt watching me, even in dreams. I drove south, letting the empty road swallow me. I was desperate to put the town behind me, to feel free. But the farther I got, the more I felt a strange ache in my chest. It started as a weight, heavy and dull, like a hand pressed over my heart. The ache grew sharper the farther I fled. Soon, it felt as though something was reaching inside me, squeezing, pressing, reminding me that escape wasn't possible. I pulled to the side of the road, gasping for breath. My chest felt tight, burning, the pain spreading to my arms. I lifted my shirt, and there, right in the center, my skin was raised and tinted a sickly green. Faint veins radiated outward, and beneath the skin, I could see a faint, unnatural pulse. For a while, all I could do was sit there and weep. The pain was unbearable. But the worst part was knowing, deep down, that I already belonged to something older and darker than I could understand. When I finally turned the car back toward home, the pain began to fade. By the time the town's faded lights came into view, I knew the truth. I could not leave. Not anymore. His influence days have passed since then, though it feels like a lifetime. Most hours I barely move from my chair. Sometimes the pain grows just from thinking about him or trying to fight his will. Other times I can sense his presence in my thoughts, like a shadow that never fully disappears. At first I thought Moose and the others were only bound by old legends, but now I know the truth. This wasn't a simple pact or bargain for peace. The king, King Moss, wasn't merely waiting or lazy. He was only resting, drawing strength, biding his time. Now, I feel him waking, stirring, rising through the roots and waters and old, hungry soil. It's strange, but I can almost sense his thoughts threading through my own, cold and ancient and terribly hungry. I fear soon there will be no difference between his mind and mine. Already my body is changing. The thing on my chest now looks almost like Moose's veins branching outward, the color of algae pulsing with an alien life. I tried to fight it, even tried to cut it out, but my hands wouldn't let me. It's part of me now. I don't think I have much time left before I'm completely his. A warning: if you're reading this, please, don't come looking for me. Don't look for this town. There is nothing here but secrets and things that feed on secrets. The river is older than any map or legend, and there are places in this world that are better left alone, left undisturbed. I wish I could tell you that the world is safe, that monsters are only stories, but I've seen too much. There are things older than memory, hungry things that rest just beneath the surface, waiting for someone to break the old agreements, or simply to wander a little too far from home. If you feel the cold touch of something watching, if you ever see moss growing where it shouldn't, or if you hear voices calling from dark water, turn away. Remember me. Remember this story. Goodbye. I won't let myself become one of his servants. Before that happens, I'll find my own ending. Please, let this story be a warning. Let it settle in the back of your mind like the hush that falls before a storm. Some rivers are best left uncrossed. Good night.